Check. Check.
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the January 22nd, 2024 regular meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone, we really mean that, and request everyone in the audience to please silence their cell phones and other electronic devices. As a matter of record, we've already appointed a treasurer pro tem, and so we're able to proceed. Mr. Guston, As Assistant Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Craig.
Here.
Mr. Lindy.
Here.
Ms. Mapp.
Here.
Dr. Moffitt.
Here.
Mr. Morosky.
Here.
Vice President Weinberg.
Here.
President Bolton.
Present. To begin, we want to have the superintendent make any update presentation she might have. Madam Superintendent, do you have an update for the good of the order?
I do. Thank you, President Bolton. So for those that do not realize it, January is School Board Appreciation Month. And so we do want to take a point of privilege to recognize our school board at this time. Let's give our school board members a round of applause, please. That was a pretty weak applause. I know we can do a little bit better than that. Let's try it one more time for them, please. Thank you very much. So on behalf of our leadership team, we do want to thank you for what you do for students every day. We thank you for your time and your service and your talent that you give to the board. And we just have a small token for you of our appreciation. We also have for you the school from the Ohio School Board Association, the certificates that come to the board every year for School Board Appreciation. So if we can get all of you to come to the front real quick, we're going to give these out and do a quick picture, and that will be our superintendent's update for today. Great update. That again?
Thank you. No, she didn't. She's going to do it now when we can. Thank you, administration. Thank you, superintendent. We appreciate the shout out. Vice President's going to inform folks how they are going to be able to participate remotely. And after she does that, we're going to introduce a little bit of a change in our normal format as we welcome several guests to speak prior to hearing of the public. Madam Vice President?
Yes, thank you. So members of the public who are online and wish to speak during our hearing of the public this evening may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for your request for 5 minutes. If you would like a direct response to your questions, please make sure to share your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and also your contact information.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We encourage all of you using that opportunity to please join us virtually if you can. Tonight we're introducing a little bit of a different format that we hope to be able to build in as needed, in that prior to hearing of the public, which will now in the future be listed as hearing the public and guests, and want to make sure that people have the opportunity to participate in this sort of way if necessary and if interested. Tonight, our guests will start with Lawrence Bergman, who will approach as a statement to share with us. And Mr. Bergman, I think, will be doing the introductions of the other few folks that are within his entourage. If not, I'm very proud and pleased to introduce those as well as best I can. Mr. Bergman, as many of us know at CPS, is not only one of those, I think, Walnut Hills graduates, one of the many.
I'm a graduate of Walnut Hills, so if any of my sentence structure is not good, please correct me. If I have any spelling that's incorrect, please let me know. And I do appreciate you all, and it's good that I'm glad in front of you all. Thank
And
you.
Mr. Bergman, we also know the many, many years of helping the district in so many different ways. And we welcome your comments tonight, and we'll listen attentively and are thrilled to have the guests that we have. So, Mr. Bergman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to meet with you this evening. My name's Lawrence Bergman. I am a board member with the School of Creative and Performing Arts Fund. I got involved with the fund when they were struggling several years ago, and was helping to raise funds for them so that they would go towards helping the students at SCPA, which includes tutors for the kids. It includes purchasing necessary items for the creative arts, and it even includes scholarships. And with me, I've several of the board members at the fund are also here. Neil Shear is here. Rita Kaplan is here. Paige Taylor is here. I want to make sure Shannon Roush is here. And they've all been very helpful, and they came to be a part of supporting the fund. In addition, I brought, because my focus is going to be on an event that occurred, I have Ari Jun here. He is with the Cincinnati Jewish Community Relations Council, and I have Jim Friedman with the Jewish Federation. There's also one of the supporters of the fund here, but he preferred to lay low, but he wanted to be here to support everyone here. I'm concerned about the future of the School of Creative and Performing Arts Fund in school because of an event that occurred on Monday, December 4th, 2023, when approximately 30 students from the SCPA walked out of the school building during school hours, headed over to Cincinnati City Hall, and protested about the war in Gaza. The protest was broadcast on our local media, including being filmed and aired on local television news. This was upsetting to me. The SCPA Fund Board was very upset. Folks in the community were upset. And it was very hurtful to the SCPA and the Cincinnati schools. There are two key points that I must make before I explain the depth of this harmful act. Number one, I fully recognize that free speech is a key liberty we all are granted in this country. What I cannot support is a hate speech. And as further elaborated on later, the CPS Code of Conduct does not condone this either. I also recognize the empathy for those suffering in Gaza does not translate to anti-Semitism. However, it is critical for these students to learn the context, complexity, and history of this war, and that words matter. How we communicate our thoughts on this war can perpetuate centuries of hate and victimization of population groups. With that said, I would like to call out what was said at the protest. Several of the students used the speaker system shouting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." This rallying cry has long been used to call for the dismantling of the Jewish state, the denial of the Jewish people for the right of self-determination, and most importantly, the calling for the genocide of the Jews. I hope that many or even none of the students that protested understood the meaning of their words. Words matter. I believe their protest was initiated by an adult or an organization that does understand the meaning of these words. The CPS school board should not avoid acting on what occurred and take seriously the consequences that could occur if they do not delve into a serious problem affecting our educational system. Secretary Cardoza, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education, is very concerned about what is occurring since October 7th, attack by Hamas on Israel. What is frightening, as one Jewish student shared with Secretary Cardoza, is it has become normalized in our country to kind of brush aside anti-Semitism. That's just simply Jew hate. More so than any other form of hate and discrimination, the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights has opened dozens of investigations into allegations of discrimination at universities and K through 12 schools since October 7th. I have copies of 2 articles I wish to share with you that confirms U.S. Department of Education is just as concerned as I and many people are about what is happening, and I'll be happy to distribute it after I finish. I've carefully read the Cincinnati Public Schools Pre-K through 12 Student Support Guide for 2023 and 2024, Code of Conduct, and understand the following. Number 1, leaving school without the authorization of a building administrator is an infraction of the Code of Conduct. Number 2, students are held accountable for their actions and words. The Student Support Guide Code of Conduct was quite informative. It is assuring to know that the board policy number 5517.01 states, and I quote, that students are held accountable for their actions and words, and that restorative practices are of a specific set of proactive and responsive strategies for strengthening relationships in our community and repairing harm when it is caused. What I do not understand is why these policies and codes were not followed, and if they were, I feel it's important to share with the public what is being or has been accomplished, demonstrating that CPS do not stand by acts of hate and hopefully preventing future acts, which is, we sadly know, have potential to worsen. Many supporters of the SCPA fund are very upset by what was said at the protest. I am very concerned that unless the CPS board gets involved to appropriately address what occurred, on December 4th, that the SCPA fund will be in jeopardy. This is a teachable moment. This is an opportunity for the Cincinnati Public Schools to focus efforts on programming that educates all students within our public schools that any form of hate is harmful. This is also a good time to find out who directed the students to violate your code of conduct by leaving SCPA without authorization. The person, group, or organization disrupted the learning process, exposed the students to safety concerns, shed a dark shadow on the school and Cincinnati Public Schools in general. I would like to thank Principal Michael Owens, who organized a short assembly where David Wise, with the Holocaust Communities Center, was given the opportunity to speak with the 9th through 12th grade students about the dangers that expressing hate has on people and society. And I'd like to comment that while I'm upset, I've also recognized what you all have accomplished with the Holocaust Center, and that your board and the policies that you worked on with the center are now used by other school systems, and that they're taking all 9th graders to the Holocaust Museum and teaching them what occurred in the past. And I thank you very much for your efforts. It means a lot. Unfortunately, David Wise couldn't be here, but he wanted to say thank you. I would like to thank, I am asking you to punish, I'm not asking you to punish, but to educate, and I urge you to forcibly communicate that any form of hate in our community, be it Jewish, Christian, Muslim, anyone, is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. I appreciate your allowing me to meet with you, and thank you for your attention to try and address the damage that has occurred and to instill and embrace the importance of diversity in our community. And I'd like to comment that, you know, this is an opportunity for, like, Ari is here. He is an absolute expert in dealing with hate, all types. And I can get a group together and help, and probably even help raise funds to teach kids. We just need guidance from the board and from the schools in developing programs to prevent this from occurring. And that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
I always forget to turn my mic on. You think after all this time I would not forget that. But Mr. Bergman, thank you for your comments, and thank you for all the efforts that you have been waging since that time, but well before all of this occurred. It's much appreciated. Much love. Thank you so much. Do you have other folks that are here? Do they wish to speak? Do they want to come down? And we'll move on. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Welcome.
I'm the director of Cincinnati's Jewish Community Relations Council. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen this evening. Larry, I want to thank you for sharing. Where are you? I want to thank you for sharing so eloquently. And I just want to add a little bit of extra framing from where I stand. In my work, I see all sort of negative aspects of our community in addition to the so many positive things that we have around us. I've seen, for instance, in our Cincinnati community, that in the 2 months following October 7th, when there was the worst act of terrorism against Jews since the Holocaust, that we had close to 1 instance of anti-Semitism a day in the Cincinnati area. So these are substantial problems that we are trying to address. And of course, Cincinnati Public Schools and what took place at the SCPA are just one facet of that. But I've also seen in the outcome of many of these incidents, perhaps not all of them, that good can arise in the wake of poorly informed behavior and poor behavior by our young people. As Larry shared, this has the makings of a teachable moment. There is nothing developmentally inappropriate with students, high schoolers, experimenting with ideas. But then when they go beyond the guardrails, it is extraordinarily important that we help to remind them of what it means to be a good partner in our civic work, what it means to be an upstander, to use the language used by the Holocaust and Humanities Center. It is better that they receive that education in high school than when they are out in the real world and where they can do real harm to themselves and others. I want to also make sure to enunciate that in doing that, you are certainly anything but alone. At the Jewish Community Relations Council, which I lead, at the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati, at the Holocaust and Humanities Center, at the American Jewish Committee Cincinnati, we have resources that we can provide to individual schools and educators to help them to make teachable moments out of unfortunate incidents. We have connections to local and national educational resources, which are plug and play, or about as close to that as you can come, so that they can make good out of bad situations. And just as a closing thought, something that's been very painful, that was quite painful to witness in all of the chaos at the SCPA to do with this demonstration, is the strife that it caused between particular communities. I'm not one to beat around the bush, so I will go out and say that it created a lot of strife and concern about relationships in our community between Jews and the Black community. In this moment, that's the last thing that we need to see. This is an opportunity for repair, despite what may have occurred. And I would issue the challenge to our school board, to our superintendent, and our other educational leaders, to particular teachers, to find ways to bring communities closer together in this moment. Whether it be the Black and the Jewish community, Jews and Muslims, Asians and Blacks, there is ample work to be done, and ability, especially with our young people who are still forming their opinions and their views about the world. So I hope to see much good come from this, and I stand here not just representing myself, but representing a community that wants to see itself be friends of Cincinnati Public Schools and allies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Jung.
My name's Neil Shear. I'm on the board. Larry Bergman, myself, and Rita Kaplan over the last 8 years have put on events for SCPA and we've raised somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. My personal involvement is because personally think it's a crime that because of ability to pay that any student could not participate in the arts or any program in any school. And I've worked tirelessly to make it a reality. And to me, at all our meetings, I don't think in terms of what we have determining what we spend. It's what we need to determine what we spend. The December event where the students left school and protested anti-Jewish sentiment was a particular punch in my stomach after years and months of all the effort to help all the kids. And to add insult to injury, the consequences were nothing. Nothing. What that tells me is that there's a double standard. If it would have been homosexual, transgender, any other group, the consequences would be severe. They would be instant and they would be painful, but not in the case of Jews. I would like to share my own personal Jewish life story. My grandfather and his brothers lived in Lithuania. Prior to World War II, they got out and they came to America. But the rest of the family did not. In 1941, the German soldiers marched the Jewish men out to the outskirts of town, made them dig a trench, shot them, and pushed them in and made their families bury them. Later on, the women and children were locked in a synagogue and it was set on fire and they were burned alive. Moments like that has left scars in me. Listening to people wish that because of being born, that I should be dead is mind-boggling painful. I look at many of the people on this board and they happen to be Black. And when I was a child growing up, I felt that we were in the same boat in life. that we were both the victims of hate in this community. When I was a teenager, my father paid off his mortgage on his house in Roselawn, and he showed me the deed, and right on the front of the deed it says his house can't be sold to Jews, colored people, etc., and it's in violation of the law. And I said to my dad, I said, how could this be possible? This is right in plain, legal document, right in plain view. And of course he's older, and he said, well, that's just the way it was, but they don't enforce it anymore, so it's no big deal. But it was a big deal to me. My last childhood experience is that my wife remembers when John Kennedy was shot. I do not. I remember when Martin Luther King was shot, playing baseball in Bond Hill. The police came and said, go home. They put barricades up on the street, and from my home I could watch fires in Avondale. And even though I was Jewish, not black, I felt like one of ours was killed too. I felt like he represented all minorities, not just black people. And that many Jews marched with Dr. King. Many Jews were killed along with other black people by the Klan. I don't understand where the hate started to come. So.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer. Jane Simon is our last speaker.
Jane Simon, teacher at SCPA. My Uncle Cheryl, along with his son, were killed in the gas chambers. My Aunt Shana, along with her children, were rounded up in the town center, tied together with barbed wire, and then run over by trucks. My sister Amy, that most of you know, has leukemia and is unable to find a bone marrow donor because Hitler killed off my bloodline, our bloodline. And now in my own workplace, anti-Semitism has crept in when a group of students were allowed to leave the building and school grounds armed with bullhorns and met by the media, who made it seem as if the students were representing SCPA in their free speech that quickly turned to hateful anti-Semitic hate speech. These young adults were not given the consequences on their return as set forth in the CPS Code of Conduct. They were exonerated by CPS administration. The whole situation has left me feeling unsupported in my own beloved school. As a teacher and a member of the Jewish community, I am truly disappointed at the disregard for the long-lasting effects. The consequences did not match the actions.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. I've had a request by member Lindy to also make a statement. Mr. Lindy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. I wrote something tonight I was going to read at the end of the board meeting during inquiries and updates, but it's on this topic. And so with the chair's president's okay, I'll go ahead and read that now. And I was actually not sure that we would be hearing from all these folks tonight, so I will try to skip the parts that have been covered. But I did want to share my perspective on what's been happening in the war in Israel and Gaza, the reactions here at home, and what this has to do with us, I think, here at CPS. These are very much my own reflections about what I've been experiencing as a Jew. I'm speaking only for myself and can't necessarily speak on behalf of others in our community. So for me, these past few months have been completely disorienting. On October 7th, Hamas, which calls for the destruction of Israel, invaded Israel, murdered over 1,000 civilians, including women, children, and the elderly, and took 240 civilians hostage. Israel goes to war to get those hostages back and to remove Hamas's ability to murder civilians in the future. Now, over 100 days into that war, Hamas still refuses to release the remaining hostages and vows to continue murdering Israeli civilians in the future. And yet we hear voices here in the United States, including here in Cincinnati, condemning Israel, accusing Israel of genocide, and chanting from the river to the sea, which is a call for the elimination of the state of Israel. This is a reference, if people don't know, to the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, which includes the entire state of Israel. At best, these protests suggest to me a deep level of misunderstanding. At worst, they are clear examples of anti-Semitism. These are my strongly held beliefs, but I recognize that others may disagree, and I'm certainly interested in pursuing mutual understanding. What does this have to do with us here in CPS? Well, at least two things from my perspective. First, there are Jewish students and staff in this organization for whom these months have been a very difficult time. And I believe we need to show that this is an organization that cares about them and that believes them. I appreciate the efforts that our administration has already made and continues to make on it. Second, we're an organization committed to education, and there is so much work to be done. I want to offer this challenge, particularly to school leaders and teachers. We need to teach students about what's happening and where it comes from. Israel is certainly not without its own flaws, which predate October 7th, and the civilian deaths in Gaza are their own massive humanitarian tragedy. And this conflict would end today if Hamas released the hostages, disarmed, and recognized Israel's right to exist. It is our job to educate children so that they value knowledge and judgment above sound bites and tribalism. And it is our job to hold the same high standards against hateful speech here that we would hold in any other context. When I wrote this, it said, some of you may know that back in December, but everybody here knows about this, a group of students left campus. Those events were shared. The quote from CPS on the news segment said that we support students using their voices as long as it is safe and not harmful to peers. It also said that no students were disciplined for participating. I acknowledge that I may not know every relevant fact, and I continue to think it's not the role of the board to make decisions in individual discipline issues. But what I want to say is that chanting from the river to the sea, particularly after the murder of over 1,000 civilians and the capture of over 200 hostages, certainly seems harmful to Jewish peers to me. I'll share later this evening on social media a set of resources for educators that I hope can be helpful on the education front. As a Jew and as an educator, this is a moment that is unlike any I've ever seen. I hope we can rise to this challenge, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. And I appreciate your comments. I know, too, that I appreciate greatly the administration's work and effort and the school's work and effort and the foundation's work and effort post this event. I appreciate, too, that we will have this dialogue expand itself to widen and to enforce, as the superintendent has tried to, our policies, particularly those policies that General Counsel reminded me of today, whether it's our anti-racism policy or our equity and excellence policy. We have referenced more than most school districts this great, horrible kind of hate that is upon us nationwide. This is not just local, as has been pointed out by Mr. Bergman, recognized by the Secretary of Education. I also find it very fascinating in this wonderfully diverse global school district, as the superintendent often references, whereas 100 languages spoken and many, many nations from around the world go to school together. We have an obligation to address this kind of issue and teach tolerance and also fight hate. And I'm proud of the work that our policy committee has done for many years in that area. I feel strongly, too, that interestingly enough, we're just a few weeks away from adopting our social studies curriculum. Everything sort of comes together in a confluence, and our social studies efforts and the community's help in our social studies very progressive curriculum somehow speaks to this. And obviously, though, we need to do an even better job. And we appreciate the offers that have come from the community tonight to help us do a better job for all of our kids. So I thank you all, and I appreciate the indulgence of the board for this and the administrations. And we will move on, and we'll allow our guests to leave. We won't burden you with the rest of our meeting necessarily, although we have a number of schools that want to speak. But you're welcome to leave, but you are certainly welcome to be here. You've informed and made us better. Thank you so much. At this time, I will turn the chair over to our vice president, who will get us ready for our hearing of the public. But again, for those of you that are very well aware of what we do here, we're in a transition as we speak. And so you'll start to see some parts of our board meetings look very different, just as this was tonight. And hopefully we'll find more and more ways to involve our community and learn from our community. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. We have material being passed out from our guests. Thank you.
All right.
The chair is yours, Madam Vice President.
Thank you so much. So we are now at our item on our agenda for hearing of the public. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and will address all comments to the presiding officer. If you are online, once a request to speak has been granted, you'll be invited to enter. You should click on the camera icon to go interactive. Provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you'd like a response to any of the questions you might have. This request is consistent with board protocol, and we appreciate your help. And in the unusual event that someone is not willing to follow this protocol, we reserve the right to end the person's time. So again, each person will have 2 minutes to speak. When the timer goes off, your time is up. And please refrain from discussing any personal items. And after speaking, if you're online, you'll briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream of the meeting. So finally, we ask that your public commentary be respectful for all of our listeners. And I'm going to ask, how many speakers do we have online this evening? Okay, so we have 0 speakers. So for those of you who are here and present in the room this evening, when your name is called, please come to the podium to speak. And our first speaker will be Sherry Wellington. And please excuse if I mispronounce your name as well. First speaker will be Sherry Wellington, followed by Philip Duvall.
Thank you, Board and Superintendent, for allowing me to share my feelings today. I am a grandmother of a wonderful first grader at Kilgore Elementary. Amazing school. My background is I was a special educator for 35 years. I have my master's in educational leadership. I have been in many, many schools, and I've worked with many, many resource coordinators. And I have never met one that is more caring, loving, and professional as Tawana Watson. We are so concerned about budget cuts. We are coming here to implore you to understand what Miss Watson means to us. Tawana Watson knows, I swear, every student in the school. There are myriad. I've never been at a school with so many clubs and after-school programs. And Miss Watson, she organizes them. She knows them all. She knows which kid goes to which club, which parent or grandparent is picking that child up. She goes in and she is amazing. The children adore her. Parents and grandparents are so grateful for her. So it's no big thing I'm coming up here, but I'm telling you, I can't imagine that Kilgore Elementary would be what it is with Ms. Watson. And thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Philip Duvall, followed by Aaron Carpenter.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to have some time to speak. My name is Philip Duvall. I also am a parent of 3 children in CPS. 2 of them are at Kilgore. 1 is at Walnut Hills. I serve as a community representative at Kilgore's LSDMC, as I have for the past several years, and I've been a CPS parent for the last 7 years. I, like a couple other people that you will hear speak today, want to speak on behalf of our resource coordinators, not just Tawana Watson, although every single thing Sherry said is absolutely true. She has been a phenomenal gift to our school. But I want to speak specifically about how having a resource coordinator has changed the culture at our school in a few short months. The last school year since she has been a part of our team, the level of communication at our school has increased, and transparency has increased exponentially. And the students' involvement in after-school opportunities and extracurricular opportunities has been amazingly increased. It's really difficult to describe, but I will just say that the difference in our school community has shifted dramatically, night and day, from, and not just since the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, this is true. What was happening right now at Kilgore is phenomenal in terms of the building of community. When I think about what we want for our children, obviously we want them to learn, but we also understand that the schools that they attend become a part of their identity and are their first experience of community as citizens of Cincinnati. They learn about community through the relationships that are built at their schools. And what I can tell you is our experience is the resource coordinator position has completely changed the game for building community at Kilgore. And I know this is the case for many schools across the board. It flattens the playing field. It creates community across socioeconomic gaps and all sorts of things, and gives opportunities and connection for people, for every single student. So I really would love to implore you all to take this into consideration as you look at the budget.
Thank you. Up next is Aaron Carpenter, followed by Stephanie S.
Good evening, Superintendent Wright, President Bolton, and members of the board. My name is Erin Carpenter. I am the mother of a 5th grader at Kilgore Elementary and a parent representative on our LSDMC. I'm here representing our parent community at Kilgore in our enthusiastic support of our new resource coordinator, Tawana Watson. Tawana joined us this school year as our very first resource coordinator, and already I cannot imagine our school without her. She has proven to be a vital part of Principal Cook Frazier's team, serving as the tactical, boots on the ground, sleeves rolled up taskmaster so that Ms. Cook Frazier is free to focus on implementing our strategic plan, which is very important work. Having a resource coordinator has been hugely beneficial to Kilgore. As you know, we are one of just a handful of schools in the district that does not receive Title I funding. So in her role, Tawana is searching out, identifying, activating the diverse set of resources out there so that we can meet our unique needs here at Kilgore. And if there's a resource that doesn't already exist, then you better believe she is getting to work making it manifest. I understand the difficult task that you all face in reconciling such a large deficit, and please know that I put my vote where my mouth is by supporting political candidates who are invested in and who invest in public schools, and by lobbying our State House to fully fund the Fair School Funding Plan and to stop expanding school vouchers. But I urge you to consider the long-term picture when it comes to our resource coordinators. They are one of the best means we have right now to stretch every dollar that remains, and we literally cannot afford to lose them. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Stephanie S. And I just ask for each speaker if you could just make sure that you're speaking directly into the mic so that all that are up here can hear, and as for those in the audience as well. And Rob, I'm not sure if the microphone has a volume option that you can turn it up just a little bit. Following Stephanie S. will be Sue Maggard.
Hi, my name is Dr. Stephanie Saklarides. I'm a professor at University of Cincinnati in the School of Education. I'm also the parent of a Kilgore first grader and a parent rep on Kilgore's LSDMC. Today, like others, I'm here to advocate for Tawana Watson in her position as Kilgore's resource coordinator. I'm deeply concerned about CPS's budget deficit and how this might impact Tawana and her position. I'd like to share with you 2 ways in which Tawana has been an asset to our school community. For one, Tawana has greatly improved communication at Kilgore. She has streamlined school communication in the form of one weekly newsletter that neatly organizes school-wide information for families. She has also revamped our website and implemented a new structure to communicate last-minute notices to families. From a recent survey that was administered to Kilgore families, folks took notice of our improved communication spearheaded by Tawana. One parent shared, "Communication from Kilgore for parents has been excellent due to the resource coordinator. This has allowed us to be engaged in the school community, understand opportunities and resources for our child in a timely manner." Additionally, Tawana has greatly enhanced the before and after school extracurricular offerings. Since starting, Tawana has overseen the implementations of dozens of clubs, ranging from cubing club to clay club to Lego club to drama club. The list goes on and on. Students are excited to participate in the diverse club offerings, and they make our public schools stand out. From the same survey referenced above, again, Kilgore families took note of this, and one parent shared, "The number of clubs has dramatically increased since Tawana has been on board. This year we have Clay Club, Arts Club, Drama Club, Band, Rubik's Cube, Legos," and those are only the ones I'm aware of. This is in addition to having chess, coding, STEAM, and these are all free of charge thanks to ABC. In closing, Tawana Watson is an incredible asset to our community. And I'd like to leave you with a few more short quotes from our parent survey. "She's an invaluable resource. She's the heart of our school. Tawana is a vital part of continuing the growth of Kilgore. I'd be lost without Tawana." Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Sue Maggard, and following will be Sally Grimes.
Hi, I represent Parker Kids Club at John P. Parker Elementary. We've partnered with that school for almost 2 decades and have seen dramatic increases in academic success and also in the opportunities that some of our kids have. I know the board faces difficult choices with the budget. Everybody is pleading a good case for why their piece of CPS should not be changed. From my perspective, all I can see is the impact that our school has on the student body, 100% of whom are on free or reduced lunch. So these kids have other challenges in their lives. They're in Madisonville, most of them, which is rapidly changing as well. But John P. Parker is a source of stability and academic success in very difficult circumstances. The school's staff and leaders have made a valiant effort and have had significant impacts on the opportunities that those kids have. So as you look at budget opportunities for reductions, I just ask that you do your best to keep stability and the well-being of our kids in mind. Thanks.
Thank you. Up next is Sally Grimes, followed by Julie Sellers.
Good evening. My name is Sally Grimes, and tonight I am here as a CPS parent and member of the LSDMC at Spencer Center for Gifted and Exceptional Students. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to invite the board, administration, and everybody listening to a Spencer Center open house on Saturday, February 3rd. That's Saturday, February 3rd from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I've been a CPS parent for 14 years with children at Pleasant Ridge Montessori, Walnut Hills, and Spencer Center. When my oldest left PRM, we enrolled her at Walnut for 7th grade. There's no doubt that Walnut is a fantastic school, but we learned the hard way it was not the right school for our children. So we looked for alternatives. Fortunately for us, Spencer Center had recently opened. We were hesitant because Spencer felt so small compared to Walnut, and we didn't know if our girls would get a typical high school experience. Boy, am I glad we took a chance and moved our kids to Spencer. Here are a few things that might surprise you about Spencer. The personalization and individualization for every student is remarkable. Because of the small size, teachers really get to know the students, and they are able to develop projects unique to every individual student. My favorite example is when my oldest, who's now graduated, loved her art class so much at Spencer, but told her teacher what she really wanted to do was be a tattoo artist when she got out of school. Next week, the teacher showed up with a tattoo gun, ink, and fake skins for my daughter to practice in art class. Who does that? That's amazing. Another thing you might be surprised to learn about Spencer is there are many athletic opportunities. Spencer's athletic director has track, volleyball, basketball, diamond sports, bowling, cheerleading, and more. Also, Spencer's resource coordinator and teachers have implemented over 35 clubs and activities, such as student council yearbook, esports, STEM bicycle club, choir, and a monthly volunteer outing. And from an academic perspective, Spencer offers a number of AP classes, including U.S. history, American government, biology, calculus, physics, psychology, and more. Please consider joining us at Spencer on February 3rd from 11 to 1 if you have never been there but have been curious to learn more.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. I just would like to say all of you missed the most wonderful night in the city on Friday night, for it was the gala of the SCPA, and it was fantastic. One of the alumni was there and performed, and he performed as the main Phantom of the Opera for 20 years on Broadway. His voice is still fabulous. So it was a great evening. But I just want to say that I stand by the words of the speakers this evening and hope that the district uses Mr. Bergman's offer to develop an educational program to educate not only our staff but also our students about the negative aspects of hate speech. Hate speech should not be tolerated against any group, and now is the time to mend these broken relationships. Cincinnati and our public schools are better than this. And this is something that we have to move on, and we have to move together. You all have to remember that the Hebrew Union College is here in Cincinnati, and this should not be tolerated here in Cincinnati. But this evening, initially, I wanted to speak to the board about class size and how important it is that the most disruption to educational processes to increase class sizes. The evidence does not support increasing any class sizes. The evidence shows that smaller class sizes boost learning and success later in life. The Institute of Education Science, the research arm of the U.S. Department of Education, cites class size reduction as one of the 4 K-12 reforms that have been proven to work through rigorous evidence. Large-scale experiments reveal that children who are in smaller classes in the early grades get higher test scores, better grades, fewer disciplinary referrals, and are more likely to graduate from high school and go to college more than 20 years later. In addition, smaller classes enhance the development of cognitive skills not captured by tests, like persistence, motivation, self-esteem, which are also linked to success in school and in life. While experiments in class size reduction in the early grades have not been replicated in the middle and upper grades, many different control group studies indicate that students in smaller classes in both middle and high school achieve higher test scores, are more engaged, less likely to drop out of school than students in large classes. One comprehensive study commissioned by the U.S. Department of Education analyzed achievement levels of students in over 2,500 schools across the country. After controlling for student background and for objective factors positively correlated with higher performance was the smaller class sizes. Class size matters. We still have, and you will be voting on it this evening, we still have many classes across this district where classrooms are overloaded. They're overloaded for multiple reasons. But we have to be more persistent and make sure that we are providing for all of our students in this district, and that we have, even the poorest schools within our district are not having overloaded classrooms. So as we move forward with the budget and the budget talks, I don't want to hear any more discussion about increasing class sizes, because our kids deserve better and class size matters. So thank you.
Thank you.
That completes section of our meeting tonight on hearing the public. We thank everyone for participating, and we'll now continue with the rest of the work for the evening. I need a motion to approve the minutes from January 8th tax budget hearing, January 8th organizational meeting, and the January 8th business meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes stand approved as presented. This evening's one presentation will be about ways that we might be able to indulge ourselves and others regarding the Inflation Reduction Act that was presented to us, I believe, by Chairman Morosky 2 or 3 meetings ago with a possible resolution that has actually been initiated by students. And indeed, we have members of the College Hill community and Aiken community coming forward to give us some opportunity to talk a little bit, not only about IRA, very little bit about it, but also, more importantly, the partnership that I know that Dr. Moffat's been working on, the partnership with the city regarding green schoolyards and the city's green plan. And so this is kind of, again, the confluence of a number of issues and work by the board. Tonight's guests for this presentation are Mark Croner, Aaron Parker, and Hugh Holler, and we were going to turn it over to you, Mr. Croner.
President Bolton, point of
Yes,
order.
please.
I wanted to just understand a little bit more about the formation of the agenda this evening. And I was a little just confused about the way that this particular presentation got on the agenda.
I put it on.
Am I right that it was without the consultation with the superintendent or with the treasurer?
Yes.
So I think, and I'll just share this as a point of order question, this did feel highly irregular to me for a couple reasons.
I've been accused of being highly irregular.
And
Part
a
of my charm.
certain amount of charm is lovely. I'm also concerned about making sure we follow the bylaws that we have. And so I wanted to raise 2 of these concerns as a point of order for the presentation. And I would like to make sure that the minutes reflect the concern that I've raised or will raise. And I also want to acknowledge there's a lot that I don't know, and I could be wrong about any of these things. But was this a request for a presentation that came from the community? So my understanding of our bylaws, and I'm thinking here of 0171B, which is that when there are requests from the community, the parent or constituent should generally be referred by board members or board staff to the customer health center or the superintendent as appropriate. And so I'm just trying to make sure that either is that being followed correctly, or is there a different?
Well, these people didn't bring a complaint. They brought an idea that is in keeping with our forecast, particularly our last line of our forecast. It also, for me, represented in part a great opportunity, too, having listened to Member Craig's statement about being what we should be doing in the future. Indeed, there was a significant part of it that talked about involving the community. So I take your point and appreciate the point.
Yeah, and it may be that's very helpful information. I think the other piece I was looking at was there's another piece of our bylaws, which is 0165.1, which is, as you pointed out, the board president shall prepare all agendas. In doing so, the board president shall consult with the superintendent and the treasurer. And I was concerned that neither of them knew what this presentation was about.
That's right. I did not consult with the superintendent nor the treasurer about this.
Could I make a request that we do that going forward?
The request,
I think that's,
to my knowledge, when we consult with the superintendent and the treasurer, that usually pertains to something that the superintendent and the treasurer bring to the board, not necessarily what the community brings to the board. Our role, although it's becoming very confused over time, our role is to represent the community. I report to the community, as we all do. The community wants to use the board to approach. I'll stand corrected that I should have communicated with the superintendent that this was happening. I agree with you. But when the superintendent removed the one presentation, rightfully so, that was planned, there was an opportunity. So
Yeah.
I will consult, but I'm not going to suggest that either the superintendent or the treasurer has the right of veto over what the board does or doesn't hear from the community.
And I'm not pushing that far. I think
Okay.
my request was that going forward, the superintendent and treasurer know what's going to be on the public agenda and have context for it before the public meeting.
The superintendent knew enough of it, maybe not before it was on the agenda, but certainly knew enough of it that indeed the city person that was supposed to be appearing tonight is not appearing, because there was concern expressed by the administration to the city administration that there was a city staff member that was also part of this presentation. So there's at least enough foreknowledge. I will be happy to take the blame of not consulting with the superintendent, but I will not suggest that indeed either the superintendent nor the treasurer can tell the board what is not or what is going to be on beyond the business that they bring to us. We are an extension of the community.
And I think I agree with you on the point you're making about, I'm not actually advocating for that. I think what I'm advocating for is that the people not be surprised. And I also like to flag that it can make, I think, running any organization really challenging, either for the treasurer or for the superintendent, if they're not aware of what's going to be given the public forum of a board meeting. We have limited airtime, and aligning that to the priorities of the district and giving them some heads up feels appropriate.
Okay, I appreciate your comment and we'll take it under advisement. And now we'll have the presentation.
Thank you very much.
We do, don't we?
But,
We should have made that way sometime.
President Bolden and Superintendent Wright, thanks for the opportunity tonight for us to bring up a potentially very interesting possibility for Aiken High School and also the Cincinnati Public Schools. And that is the Aiken Green Community Learning Center. That's what we want to talk about. The Inflation Reduction Act is one of the triggers that brought all this together. And that's why this is kind of time sensitive, because we don't know how long that's going to last and what's going to happen with the future administrations. But a working definition is a CPS pilot project promoting sustainability, environmental awareness, appreciation of the natural world, community connections, and green jobs. So that's what Aiken High School has been working towards. There's a lot of work that's already been done already, but there's a lot more potential with things that are happening. Next slide, please. The what is really, this is an educational track that provides learning opportunities, hands-on experience and connections to existing environmental and sustainability organizations that can lead to related higher educational and employment opportunities and a greater appreciation of the natural world. Next slide, please. Why is this happening, or why is this being brought up? Well, I think that this is an attempt to align students with current and future realities, what's going on in the world with climate change and environmental degradation, make them aware of what's happening, and get them to be part of the discussion about what needs to be done. Increase students' awareness of challenges related to climate change and environmental degradation, preparation for green jobs, which is going to be a bigger part of their future than it certainly was mine. Tie into existing community and federal plans. That's why the IRA has language in there about climate change for the support for the schools. And the City of Cincinnati Green Cincinnati plan, which has been being talked about throughout the community as part of this too. Increase students' awareness and appreciation of the outdoor natural world, so they're not just learning about what's going wrong with it, but what's going right with it. And a utilization of new federal funding to jumpstart efforts. Next slide, please. So the Inflation Reduction Act funding is out there right now. There is language about helping the schools with different types of funding for that. That remains to be seen how that applies here. The American Climate Corps initiative, which has been introduced by President Biden, is also something that could really fit in with this model program and tie in with AmeriCorps programs in City Year and other things that are already going on. Proven related success and momentum at Aiken. I should say that my connection with Aiken is I worked there for 5 years as a therapist. I'm a member of the LSDMC, and I live 2 houses down from Aiken, so I've been there for 30 years. So I've seen Aiken go through all kinds of changes, and what's going on there right now is extremely special. This Green Cincinnati plan is really fits in with a lot of things that Aiken are already doing, and the Green Cincinnati plan was something that was created by hundreds of community members. But rather than reinvent the wheel at Aiken, tying a school system in with what's going on at the city, I think really makes a lot of sense. There are a ton of existing collaborations with numerous local and regional environmental programs that Aaron Parker is really had a lot to do with that are up and running. So this is not something we're talking about in the future. It's very happening right now. There's a lot of business and neighborhood support. Next slide, please. Why Aiken? This is my slide here. A proven success in leadership. I've been involved in the nonprofit world for 4 decades, and I know dysfunction, and Aiken is not a dysfunctional school. Key partnerships are already established with a lot of agencies, the programs that Aaron's going to talk about. The administrative stability is something that really struck me when I was working at the school, and it's been completely consistent through as long as I've been around. The big point here is the uniqueness of the property. I don't think there's any other place in the city that has the setting that Aiken has, the property that's being used, plus a lot of undeveloped property that can be turned into all types of projects and things for students to learn and to really appreciate nature, and also to learn about jobs and things like that. The existing business and community support we'll talk about, and then finally the history is a site where Aiken is at was the site of the Howe's first Farmers College. So I think it's kind of a fun thing to tie back in and tie us back in with the past. Next slide, please. So there's a plaque right out in front of the school that talks about that a little bit more. So it's a special site. Next slide. So the next slide is about collaborations that are already up and running, and you can see a lot of them are key players in this city in terms of green jobs. But there's everything from a restaurant that supplies compost to the garden every week, a tree company that gives wood chips for the trails and for the garden, and then a lot of really well-established organizations, some of which you hear about here in a second. Next slide, please. One of the key, I'm going to let Aaron Parker, if you go back to that previous slide, please. I'm going to let Aaron Parker talk a little bit more about the existing collaborations that he has really made happen.
Welcome, Mr. Parker.
Hi, welcome. I'm so excited to be here, and my name is Aaron Parker. I'm the Agricultural Career Tech Pathway Educator at Aiken High School. Prior to that, I was the International ESL Coordinator. Aiken is a diverse school. Aiken is a school that is really in its community and representative of its community, and part of the community is our partnerships. And with this list of people we work with, they are the ones who have asked us to come before the board. And I was thinking about what I was going to speak today, and I went down to our farm before I got over here to do a little wellness check on our animals. And I was going down to the farm. I saw an older man coming up the hill with his 2 dogs, a Pomeranian and a German Shepherd. And I said, good afternoon. He said, good afternoon. It's a beautiful day. And you've been outside. It's not always a beautiful day. It was melty, it was drippy, but he was out there on our school grounds enjoying the outside. I get down there and there's a mother with her 2 little daughters in there. And I said, welcome back. Why? Because I'd seen them there before. And I said, do you have any questions? They said, no, the girls just love coming down here to see the animals. And I said, you know, that's really why we're doing this, is because the community wants this. Are we going to another slide? Am I going on with mine? Yeah, if you can move forward, please. And so I don't think everybody has been, you want to go one more? Maybe one more. Okay, so our story with Aiken goes back about 2 years. We sent some students up to the Ohio State University through an Explore Ag program, and they caught the eye of the Ohio Farm Bureau. And and Ohio 4-H. 4-H was started here in Ohio. And what they did is they sponsored 3 students of ours, our agriculture students and myself, to go out to Washington, D.C. to a national conference. It was our Lead to Change conference for agri-science. And so from that, we had to do a Shark Tank pitch. And what we did is we pitched a program about providing food security and awareness for our community, how our kids could solve a problem in our community. They did that, and they came up with the acronym of CHARM, College Hill Agriculture Resource Management. It's charming. So what they did is they provided multilingual interpretations of what our Aiken campus provides, because we have over 40 languages, 50 countries. We're international. What they did is they went and they partnered with University of Cincinnati researcher, Dr. Alan White, to map with university students what you see here on the board here. This is all on GIS also, of where the food resources are in the community. And we probably have people in this room that live in the College Hill community. We raised awareness to what was in their backyard, what was in their neighbor's yard in terms of an apple tree, a beehive. It could just be a mulberry bush. So what we did further, if you want to go on to the next slide, please, is this is where I want to take you on a journey of Aiken High School. And this is where Aiken becomes not just a green schoolyard, as we love to have all around our city, but it becomes a green community learning center. We have an active community learning center here at Aiken. We've got a dental clinic. We've got a school-based health clinic. We've got a pantry. And we make all of that available to our community. But what happens when 3 o'clock hits and the doors close? Students can't access that. The community can't access that. What they can access is the outside. And that's what I experienced when I walked down the hill to do my wellness check on my animals before I came here. I saw an elderly man going for a walk with his 2 little dogs, a Pomeranian and a German Shepherd. I saw a mom and her 2 daughters coming back again because they love to herd the ducks into the pen. And if you've never been to Aiken, at least recently, you'd be amazed. Our students, through that 4-H program in Washington, D.C., they developed this map. They designed the icons. They worked with a professional artist. They worked with a university professor. And this map is actually putting Aiken on the map. And in a larger sense, in our community. So as you drive down that driveway, you'll see 2 metro signs. Our students, we put 1 metro sign on there, and the students said, hey, if we're going to get to school, we got to get home too. They said, we got to put a metro sign on the other side. I said, that's thinking. As you drive down there, you'll see you can stop in our school. You can get a cup of coffee in our school. We have a brand new mushroom opening up. We have a career tech pathway that teaches agriculture. You go down there, you can see our greenhouse. You can go down there and you can see pollinator gardens collaborating with Northern Kentucky University. You continue down that path where you see the young man with the backpack, and you go past our ducks, our guineas, our chickens, all of that which have been hatched by our students and raised and nurtured and cared for every day. You go over to the paddock and you'll see our 4 alpacas, our 4 goats, 2 of which were birthed just this past May. And you'll see people that are interacting with them. This is a green learning center. This is where people come, our community wants in their community, and the doors never close. I go down there on a Saturday and a Sunday. You're welcome to go down there too. I'm there at 9 o'clock to feed the animals. And I can't be down there without having a hiker jump on our natural resource trail to go for a hike, to see a wild turkey, to see deer, to go and to connect to the forest next door, which we have one of our partners, that's their tagline for the Camping and Education Foundation, the Urban Wilderness Program. And they can connect to a Cincinnati Park Preserve that is vastly underused, but, well, made usable by our students because they're the ones that made the connection. So, as a green learning center, we are connecting community to the school. And that's what the community wants. But how can the community get to our school? We have to give them a map. We have to make them aware of what is on our community and make them aware of the community partners that we have within there. We have our career tech. We have Cincinnati Public Schools, and we thank you very much. We have our work-based learning partners of Groundworks. And we have our professional leadership organizations like FFA and 4-H. But we're working with the universities. We're working with the employers. We're working to create these green jobs. And when our community comes onto our campus in the summertime, in fall, and spring, they see our kids making their communities better. And I invite you to visit. You have a map. I think we made you a copy. You can't get lost. And if you're there, you'll probably see somebody there who can show you the way. But with that being said, I would like to introduce our other community partner, and that is Mr. Hugh Holler, who on the map, you'll see a footprint in the parking lot. And we are good stewards of resources. We get private funding, whether it be from 4-H. We ask for public funding through Perkins, through Career Tech, and we are making things happen at Aiken in terms of Green Learning Center. And one of those most valuable partners is the Camping Education Foundation.
Thank you, Aaron. Go. Can I ask ahead of time, is the video that I was going to show, is that going to be? No? You said yes or no? Okay. All right. Well, I will pivot here then. First of all, I just want to thank the board for inviting me. I want to thank Ankin for inviting me. And, you know, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do this presentation, and then listening to all that's been going on today, it strikes me that, you know, obviously the board has a lot of challenges. I actually have 3 children in the CPS school system myself. And I just want to be sensitive to all that you have going on. I'm not here for an ask at all. I'm really here just to educate. This program, the Urban Wilderness Program, which is sponsored by the Camping and Education Foundation. We've been here in Cincinnati for about 13 years. If you can go to the next slide, please. The Camping and Education Foundation, we're a nonprofit. This is actually our 100-year anniversary this year. We're based here locally in Cincinnati. Serve about 2,500 kids a year. Our core product is 2 summer wilderness camps that are located up in northern Minnesota on the U.S.-Canadian border. But most importantly, and germane to this presentation, we have local programs here that Aaron referred to as the Urban Wilderness Program, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So if you go to the next slide. Shoot, I'm sorry that we can't show this video. It really brings it to light. But at any rate, the Urban Wilderness Program, as I said, has been here for about 13 years. We serve about 2,200 kids here. We are throughout 25 schools in the Cincinnati area. That's a combination of CPS schools, Montessori schools, different organizations. And we deliver 2 programs here. One is an in-school program that is built around our boat building initiative, and the other is an outdoor education program. So if you could go to the next slide, and I have a feeling this is where the video comes in, so I will let you read the testimonial. I'm not going to read it myself, and then we'll go to the next slide.
Did we?
I did send it.
Yeah.
Apologies, we did not receive the video in time to re-encode it so that we can stream it with audio. If we would like to play it just in this room,
Yes.
we could do so.
Please do.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks for the.
And
The Urban Wilderness Program is an outdoor experience. We have our canoe building piece and our field trip piece. For our canoe building piece, we come to your school, we bring all the materials necessary, all the tools.
Today, what you guys are going to be doing is we're actually going to start making our boat.
It's just a fun way of learning other than like sitting at a desk, you're moving, you're working with tools you've never experienced before. And then at the end, you like get to see what you've created. And then with our field trip piece, we'll teach them fire building, fire by friction, how to cook over an open fire, canoeing, portaging, how to keep a boat straight.
The beginnings of the Urban Wilderness Program really stemmed out of just the desire to reach more kids. We have these 2 wonderful camps up in northern Minnesota on the Canadian border, but there's a limitation to how many kids we can get up there. We said, hey, how do we bring the magic of the North Woods to an urban environment?
What the Urban Wilderness Program is, it's the complete package. They bring the people, they bring the expertise, they bring the materials, and what they also bring are the connections to what you can use within your own classroom.
I would describe this program as fun and very unique. When I first came here, I was like, what is a canoe? I didn't know what was up. And then also, it will be like a big impact of your life, knowing that you did something and then you had fun. Not everyone gets to experience this in their life, so I'm grateful that I get to build one and I can talk about it.
But I tell kids, you're creating these lifelong memories that you'll never forget. They'll never forget that they actually went in the canoe and they used the canoe that they built.
So this is something that gets students, like, they put their hands on it. This is something they teach you how to do it, and you learn from it, and it's a real life skill.
I think more than anything, they're discovering that they can do things that they wouldn't have ever thought they could do. I mean, for a kid who's never had a tool in his hand or never has actually built a fire before, yeah, I can do this. In a day and age where kids are kind of living in a non-real environment, it's real, and they don't get these opportunities. They don't exist.
I think the biggest thing is it's giving them a different viewpoint.
When I told my parents of the type of activities I was involved in school, like building canoes, they were like shocked and proud of me at the same time. And they were like, wow.
When I first purchased down the canoe and then I put it in the water, I felt really great. But then I was scared too because I never been on a canoe before. And when I drifted down and then when I actually sat on it and when I paddled away, I felt really empowered.
At the end of the day, I want them to learn all the soft skills about like teamwork to build the boat, leadership to take charge and really own their project. And then when they finish, have a sense of accomplishment, like we did that.
The value of this program is that this really provides us an opportunity to get kids not just to step outside and learn, but next steps for possibly beyond high school. And the avenues that have opened up for them have been significant. We rescued students that would not have graduated through this program.
What I care about is the impact. And what I've seen in this program is the intense impact it's made in kids' lives. It changes them. It's transformative. That's the impact. If you can make that change with one, you can light that spark, create that affinity, you know, a love for nature. And we talk about climate change and global warming and all this. You really want to change that, you got to get kids to love it first. Go to the next slide, please. So that video speaks much better than I can. It says everything, and I know that we've probably been long-winded here, so I'm going to skip over a little bit of this. I know your time is short, so if you could go to the next slide. Here's some pictures. As I mentioned before, boat building, canoeing, connecting with nature. These are all different parts of the program. Go to the next slide. This is a slide I wanted you guys to see. These are all the different schools, and this is not an exclusive list, but these are a lot of the schools that we work with. There's no question that we have an emphasis on working with schools that don't get these kind of opportunities. Partnership with Aiken is a perfect example of that. Next slide. So what's next? This is our next phase, and this sort of ties into the presentations that were made earlier. We are currently positioning ourselves to open up an urban wellness center on Aiken's campus. Aaron talked about Aiken is unique in that all the outdoor space that it has. If you go to the sort of the back 40 of their campus, they have trails that go all the way to Mount Airy Forest. So it's a unique opportunity for us to be located there. Gives us the opportunity to establish an after-school program that will be open to all kids across the city, and just reinforce a lot of the skills that we're already teaching. But more importantly, it leads to educational pathways, career opportunities, and really reinforces a lot of the STEM-based learning that they're already achieving at school. So next slide. Just to leave you with this, today we're talking about community partners. I mean, obviously that's a big part of what Cincinnati is about, a lot of the challenges you have. We already work with a lot of community partners here. We're established. We've been here for a long time. We're not going anywhere. We just welcome the opportunity to educate you, to let you know what we're doing, and the work that will be coming up. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
If you could go back to the original slide. Okay, and go forward, please. So Aiken does have experience with creating new tracks for students. They've done a lot with the tech world and that. So it's not something that the school would have to start from scratch to figure out how to make this work. And I just wanted to have that in there. Next slide, please. So anyway, the real tie-in with the IRA is that that's one of the triggers that got Aiken talking about really developing this Green Learning Center. You already got huge companies is on board. They're already doing this stuff. So it's not like something that might happen. It's happening already. The Green Cincinnati plan, I've looked at that, and we are going to get copies for the board members to look at, but it's an amazing piece of work that was done by hundreds of people in the city that really needs to get out there, and to tie that into a school or a school system, I think is just, beyond belief. Next slide, please. So, these are some of the things that the school needs to really make this take off, and we would like to, look beyond the IRA and the Climate Corps, and but to try to get more funding. So anything the board knows about other sources of funding would be appreciated. Upgrades of existing gardens, upgrades to the farm, purchases of trees, animals, and plants, expansion of existing structures. A pickup truck would be great. Staff assigned to coordinate field trips and weekly speakers. Support and involvement of existing faculty, administration, needed schedule changes to do field trips and things like that, and more scarecrows because the garden's getting bigger. Next slide, please. Some other possibilities down the line that that could be added onto this, that other people around the country are doing: green roofs, solar panels for the buildings, a tilapia pond, bees, orchard expansion, other gardens and open spaces and terraces. There's a lot of land down there, and then AmeriCorps volunteers. So the ask is really basically that CPS will, look into the IRA and other sources of funding to see how they could help Aiken develop further this Green Learning Center and turn this into a community and hopefully a national model. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Croner. Does any board member have any comment or question? Anyone? Mr. Lindy.
This is probably a question for President Bolden, but the thing that would be most helpful to have from the board on this tonight would be what?
I think the most helpful thing would be the idea as we approach the $89 million or $112 million kind of change in revenue that we have, is to not just think about cuts, but also over the next 3 fiscal years, particularly as our treasurer worries about cash flow, to start to be as aggressive as we possibly can be as a board and as an administration to find additional funding. And I think IRA is one of the ones that makes one of the best opportunities for us, because we've been living this sustainability effort. So we have credibility when we make the grant. So that would be one thing. And I think another thing is, as we look at expansion of career tech, as we do and need to, or as we try to, what I'm trying to do is live by our forecast as to where we want to be. Do what we do in part based upon what is in our forecast. And I think that would be it. But if you want a specific thing right now, besides the knowledge of what's happening in the community in an association with our schools, and you saw the number of schools, would be the idea of additional funding, rather than trying to find a way to cut our way to our financial health, but also to expand the opportunities that we have revenue-wise. Other questions, comments? Dr. Moffitt?
Well, thank you for this presentation. I do work with the Green Schoolyard community, and it is a pretty massive operation that we've got going on, and I'm proud to help with that in any way that I can. I think I've gotten more knowledge than I've given, for sure. But what's going on in Aiken is amazing. Now, I'm not a product. My mom graduated from Aiken. And but I am super excited every single time I speak with the students of Aiken in your FAA, is that right? Your FFA program. They are knowledgeable. They are excited. They've got a store in there. They sell coffee. It's just amazing of the things that we have going on in our buildings that the community doesn't know about. Some people in College Hill don't know about, and they really want to help. So continue to do what you are doing with the students there, because that's igniting education. And I'm super proud of you all. Please let them know that. And I'm happy to learn more. So thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think it was very informative in allowing us to just be informed of all of the great things that are happening at Aiken. I do need just a little bit of clarification, as I had the opportunity to research some information about the IRA. From my understanding, is grant money as well as tax credits that are available under the IRA, which will allow us to make our buildings more efficient. So I just need some clarity on how the program or the information that you all shared aligned with that.
Actually, that's what we were hoping you would help us with. No, you know, that remains to be seen. It's to look at the IRA, for the school system to look at that, to see what possibly how that could tie in with what Aiken's doing. That's kind of the goal of that. You know, that could be solar panels for the buildings. There's outbuildings that we want to get electrified and have solar panels put on. So there's things in there I think could benefit the school.
Okay. So the ask from us is to look more into what the IRA entails in terms of what is allocated under the grants as well as the tax credits. Is that the ask?
Yeah, how that could tie in with what Aiken's already doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Morosky, thank you.
Thank you, President Bolton. And thank you all for coming. It's good to see you. Good to see you all as well. I love the farm. My kid loves the farm. And then to Board Member Mapp, related to that question, so the resolution that you received is not something we've passed. It is something you will see at our first policy meeting, because it came before us in December, and we put it in the policy committee to have general counsel's office look at it, to see if everything in it was something we could even legally do. I mean, I assume it is, but I don't know that. And so as chair, I accepted it. I can't remember, it might have been Ms. Bolton or President, I don't remember, it doesn't, but it came to our committee. And there were a lot of students that came and spoke on behalf. Councilmember Jeffries and Councilmember Owens also came and spoke on its behalf. But just to kind of bolster your point and their point, I said it then and I'll say it now, and I've been saying it a lot, there is a tremendous amount of money sitting out there that does absolutely have an expiration date. I've lived long enough to not take anything for granted. I don't know who will be president again or next. The city, I think what's interesting about this now, and I said it at that meeting when the council members were here, it is not often you have council members coming here and saying they want to do something with and for us. And so I think there's the opportunity, if I may, not to speak on y'all's behalf, but I think that is why you brought it. This is an example. Gamble Montessori has examples. My kid's school at Hayes Porter, Hayes has a garden. My son James has a garden at Hayes. It's all over the district. Doing this district-wide with all of these examples with the city, millions of dollars. And so I think, I mean, I don't know what it could be either, but I mean, solar certainly is one thing. But that's what if you were confused by the resolution, I also wanted to point that out, like that's something in the hopper.
Thank you for clarifying that, and I'm definitely an advocate for providing these opportunities for our students to engage in the outdoors. We definitely know that bolsters their overall wellness also, and just creating exposure to different opportunities. So thank you for clarifying how those two
align. And, I also think it's a great opportunity for us to be efficient within our school setting.
Thank you. Mr. Craig?
I would just add on to the points made by Mr. Morosky here is that I think this is also an opportunity. We've known of certain projects in the past where we have talked about this is a opportunity to save the district money in the long term. Because we do recognize that grants don't go forever. So, all these things that we would be doing would be an effort to make a long-term investment in the district and finding ways to fund that short-term thing. And so I think those things like the IRA, the way to do that in the short term, in the near term, that would allow us to do a little bit more. Because I think that's the other part that we want to make sure that we do, as we're seeing with ESSER right now, is that short-term funds really do need to be used for that near-term, short-term investment that will save the district in the long term, as opposed to sustainability of something that we won't have afterwards. And so I think that's a great thing that the policy has taken up, to kind of look at that and see what can we do in the near term with these resources that may be out there for this short period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Any other last comments? Superintendent?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So just to add a little bit of clarity, there are two things that are happening at once. So one, in terms of the resolution, we have, that was in November or December, I believe. So we've worked with the team to come back with a response for the resolution. So that's one. The second part, in terms of the funds that we're discussing right now, is actually, it starts in tax credits. So it's 30% off of the approved cost of the project, and then an additional 10% for economically disadvantaged areas, I believe. Yes, economically disadvantaged. So, and if we don't pay taxes, then it could actually be funding, but it's not just an automatic, where it's an automatic grant that's granted outright. So I just wanted to kind of share that in terms of clarity and clarification around the use. The responses so far that we have been working through in terms of thinking about the renewable energy and electrification start some of that conversation as well, because we have been able to cross-reference and talk about the things that we do believe that we may be able to move forward with. I was actually on the Green Cincinnati Planning Committee as well for the city. And so working through that with the team at the time, and continuing to work with the city departments around what we can do in collaboration, much like we're talking about our bus electrification, is some of the same kind of conversation. So just wanted to add that in terms of clarity.
Thanks for that clarification and that additional information. Mr. Lindy?
Yeah, thank you so much, President Bolton. Thank you, Superintendent. I wanted to, before we close, just respond to the request that you made, President Bolton, about what's most helpful. And I think you raised, I think, a really important idea about a context where we're looking at the end of ESSER. And maybe we should not just look at cutting our way to solving that problem, but looking for additional funding for some of that. And from my perspective, I don't know if we can cut that much or not yet, but I'm excited about the process we're running, and I think we'll learn more in the coming months. I think the one perspective I did want to share, I think that there's like cautious optimism around this. And I say cautious only because I think there is some risk of the tail wagging the dog with funds like this, where you design something so that you're eligible for the funding, when that's not actually in line with what your core strategy is that you've been pursuing and need to pursue. And so I think just from my perspective, I think, I would love for there to be funding available for CPS kids, families, staff through the federal legislation. I think the question in my mind would be like, does this help us get the outcomes for students that we looked at in our goals and in our guardrails? And if yes, I think we should fight like wild to get every single penny. And if not, I think going after that funding actually distracts us from going after the things that we've committed to and that make the biggest measurable difference for children. That I appreciated the question, and I wanted to make sure I responded.
I think that makes good sense, and I appreciate the comment. Dr. Moffitt?
So having been a part of the Green Cincinnati planning for over a year and gone to some of those meetings, I think, and definitely share some input here, I don't think that we're designing anything to fit into applying for this funding. We qualify because we are doing things that qualify for funding. And so green schoolyards, outdoor planning, playscapes, all of those things, the federal government is funding, and we just happen to be doing those things. But I do think that it maybe warrants a little bit more information to this board about what that plan is and how the city is already and has been for some time looking at partnering with the district for things like something as simple as solar panels, something as simple as utilizing our buildings that need new roofs, putting solar panels there. There is money for that. The city is already applying for some of that money. And so I want to switch the thinking, and maybe former President Lindy will be able to provide a little bit more context with some documentation from the city and maybe send it to the entire board, because this is not let's fit into, this is you're already doing it and have been doing it for some time. Did you know you can get some money? And to Board Member Morosky's point, it's not a little bit of money. It is probably billions, but millions of dollars for things that we are already doing. And we've been doing great things in our buildings. So I do think that if you all have a copy of the Green Cincinnati plan, I will talk to Councilmember Owens and Councilmember Jeffries, who already lead that charge. Perhaps it would be prudent for us to have more of the board members aware of what is already being done and how the board is being asked to partner to existing funding. So I will get that to you so that there will be no problems with clarification. And I do really, really applaud and support the work that's already being done.
If I could add one thing or two things, I think it's very important that our administration, as you all will recall back in October, in a fact-finding phone call, we all had conference call, if I recall, we talked about over the 5 years what we need to be doing with our facilities. And indeed, knowing we can't afford to do what we need to do. And that's just to maintain the facilities that we have. So there's that level of IRA as well as this green sustainability. So there's, again, a confluence of what we've been doing. But let me tell you a quick story. About 6 years ago, Mr. Morosky and one of our wonderful teachers, Tommy Frank, were fired up and ready to go about outdoor education, especially as it pertains, this is 6 years ago. Now, I'm old, but I still have some memory, about how can we make a connection with Mount Airy Forest. These people right over here are making that connection with Mount Airy Forest, because some of you may not know, unless you have drones and you fly them over the center of the universe called College Hill, you won't know that our woodlands are part of the Mount Airy Forest, so to speak. And indeed, there is a pond that we won't talk about in Mount Airy Forest. And indeed, there's a way of a trail that could connect with the original partnership that we had when we started CPS outside, was between CPS and the Park Board, who is also continuing to be a great partner. And I won't say any more because I don't know what we're allowed to say or not say, but there's a way to walk from Aiken to Mount Airy, carrying your canoe and going to a pond and fish or do whatever else is needed to be done. That's community. And that's us fitting in and the committee finding a way to make best use of our time for our children and our teenagers. Very exciting. If there's no other comments, we will thank these people that have presented tonight and appreciate, more importantly, all that you do when you're not here, with all that you do for our teenagers. And we appreciate school staff that's here tonight, and you've made an impression, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And now we'll go again with some more of our business that we must have. And I believe we have one resolution for this evening, and I think the Vice President's going to present it.
Yes, we have one resolution tonight. It's a resolution approving students eligible for subsidy reimbursement in lieu of transportation for the 2023-2024 school year. I submit this resolution as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we need a roll call. Mr. Augustine?
Thank you. Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Lundy,
Yes.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Dr. Moffat?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg?
Yes.
And President Bolton?
Yes. Madam Vice President, do we have any retirements reported from the superintendent's report today?
We do not have any announcements for retirements this evening.
Thank you very
Maybe
much.
next meeting.
Appreciate it. Now, let's move on to, I believe, our superintendent's recommendations.
Yes, so one point of clarification.
Please do.
For the
And
recommendations.
then we'll take our motion.
Okay. So just want to see which direction we're looking to go. We're prepared to go either way. We do have, so we reviewed the calendar. Our calendar was recommended during our 2 open meetings during November 1st and last week. However, we do have 2 additional days that students are not in classes. So we have a resolution prepared, but we understand that the board would have to agree to take action on that in terms of the resolution, or we can hold the calendars until the February 5th meeting. It's completely at the will of the board.
I appreciate you bringing this up because we want to do it right. And I know we've talked about, at least 3 times, we've talked about the calendars, and I know, and you've gone back and made some adjustments, so I feel good about it. But I think the law or whatever requires that if there's a difference in the instructional time, requires a hearing and then a vote. Is that correct, General Counsel? Or what are we counting as I think the superintendent summed it up. I don't want to confuse it. But I know there's been some confusion by me, the chair, on what's required.
Yeah, the statute always requires, each year requires that the Board of Education hold a public hearing on the school calendar addressing topics that include but not limited to total number of hours in the school year, length of the school day, beginning and end days of instruction. I think we had counted both the November 1 COW and then I think there was a second COW where it was discussed as a public hearing. Thereafter, it has to be at least 30 days before it's adopted. So if we're not counting that as a hearing, that would need to be at least 30 days from whatever we are counting. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're counting what we did as the public hearing. But now we know that it has to wait 30 days.
It has been 30 days since those.
He's starting to count with November 1st.
Right.
So what we've traditionally done without quite so much, and I appreciate us trying to get this right this time for sure, the option is that we could count what's in the superintendent's report as our vote, which has been the tradition, correct? But does this require a resolution, not just the 30 days?
I believe this requires a resolution.
And we've not done that before, but now we need to do that. And you have a resolution. Is it possible for us to have that resolution on February 5th?
Yes.
And would that meet all the criteria that we would need? So tonight, we're not going to be voting on the calendar, but there's always been agreement, especially with the adjustments the superintendent has made.
Yes, I believe passing on the 5th would meet all the requirements.
If that's okay with the superintendent to cover all bases, let's do that.
Support.
Thank you. And it won't need any more work except board staff coming up with a resolution for passage.
And the general counsel has prepared the resolution.
Great. And if you'll submit that to the board office, then that'll be in our plan for February 5th. Great. Thank you. And thanks for all the detail and getting it right. Appreciate it. All right, now I have a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendations.
So moved.
Do I have one?
So moved.
So moved from Mr. Morosky. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Lindy, and now we will open for discussion by item or in total. Do I have any board members with any particular question? Yes, sir. Mr. Craig.
So just to be clear, we are approving all but the 3rd recommendation, correct?
Yes. Thank you for that clarification. Comments? Item? Any board members? Superintendent recommendations? Okay, no discussion? Oh, yes, ma'am.
I just had a question, Superintendent Wright, about the second quarter overload pay. So I'm noticing that we have a significant amount of educators that are being compensated, which we definitely would want that to happen with having additional students within the class. But I'm wondering, have we had the opportunity to track this information, to just generate some type of data, identifying whether this is happening in particular grade levels or specific schools, so that we can be preventative moving forward as we are considering like the hiring process or our class sizes?
To the question, yes. I think it's two things. So the amount of overload that happens for teachers is a part of our collective bargaining agreement with CFT. And so that's how they initially get the additional overload. We monitor, as was in the updates that I sent to the board every week, an update around vacancies and where those vacancies are, which schools they're in, and down to the actual position for those vacancies specifically. So we have been tracking that for a period of time. Where we are with vacancies right now, even where we started at the beginning of the year, for our, especially across our core subject areas, are significantly lower. Not where we want to be, because we want to be at 100%, but we are significantly lower than we were the previous year and where we've been the previous other years. So this is a continued byproduct of the challenges that that's happening across the country right now with staffing, with looking at the numbers of teachers. And in many instances, you know, we have, even though we continue to interview, we continue to offer positions, we will always hire teachers. But one of the things that we're noticing now is after the overall processes, students continue to enroll, and then staffing does not necessarily move with those students. So you have students that withdraw from one space, but when they go to another space, once we finalize at the beginning of the year after the overall process, after students have entered, then we don't move staff around, even if there is a need across the building. So we really have to continue to work with the hiring process and continue to focus in the specific areas.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I think we're ready for the roll call.
All right, Mr. Craig.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Ms. Mapp,
Yes.
Dr. Moffat,
Yes.
Mr. Morosky,
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg,
Yes.
President Bolden.
Yes, can I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Is there a second?
Madam President, there are two corrections.
Okay,
The treasurer's
let me
report.
give the second, and we'll, forgive me, Mr. Guston, but I defer to the superintendent. I did not, before we started, but I did not defer to you. I
Quite all
probably
right.
would have, I stand corrected on that, and I know that I would have been admonished greatly by the treasurer, so you can feel free to admonish me. Okay, but later you can do that. So yes, two corrections before we move on, Mr. Guston. Thank you.
Okay, on section 4 under board assignments, for Ms. Mapp, the date is incorrect. It says 2022, it should be 2024. And then on section 3, the donation section, the total, the grant, all the donations are correct, but the grand total is incorrect. Grand total should be $10,205.05.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, especially the second one.
Sure. So the first one under board assignments for Ms. Mapp, just the dates, the year's wrong. It's on page 5 of the treasurer's report. It should say 2024 instead of 2022. All right, and the second one is amendment number 3. All of the donations are correct, but the total line is incorrect. The total line should read $10,205.05.
Everybody get those corrections?
For Amendment 3, I'm sorry, for Amendment 3, I'm on that amendment. What was the correction?
Attachment 3, yeah. The total line at the very bottom. Instead of being $39,794.67, it should be $10,205.05. $205.05.
Corrections? Duly noted. Do I have any questions, comments about any specific item of the treasurer's report? Dr. Moffett?
So I have some questions, and I was trying really hard to read Treasurer Wagner's response, but I'll just ask them here. I have some questions around what's the total for board assignments for section 4? What is the total for the Council of Great City Schools? And I'm asking that question because we had some information. We had a couple months ago, the council submitted, I guess, an open PO request for $100,000, and we brought that back down to 20. But I'm wondering what is covered for the 20. You know what the total amount is for that?
I do not have that.
Okay. The other question that I had was around the then and now under section 2. Can you tell me what does the funding source 019 cover? And then we've got party requisitions for there. So I'm wondering, what is that funding source 019? It says grant fund.
So Fund 19, there's school grants that are given to us by different grantees. This one in particular is from GE. The grant from 2000, we've really been working with them since about 2009. This particular one's from the 14-15 school year. The purpose was just, impact, 21st century leaders and learners. It's been used by various superintendents. Travel, training, those sorts of things over the years. And we're just currently in the process of spending that down.
Does that have an expiration?
It does not. The donors have wanted us to get done with it as quickly as possible, but there's not a specific expiration date.
So can you tell me what that amount is? Because it looks like we've used $81,827 under Fund 19, and we're paying for a party out of that one, which is a little concerning to me at $5,000. But is that typical for that particular fund?
So in Fund 19, there are a lot of different grants. So it's not just one specific grantee. So when you see the Fund 19s, they come from all over the place. Every one of those is kind of a separate grant. So you have to kind of go a level deeper to see who the grantee is and what.
But the usage for that particular request follows underneath that particular fund?
It does.
Okay. And can you describe to me can you explain publicly what is a then and now? It's under the then and now section.
Sure. That's a good question. So state law requires that you have a purchase order for every purchase that you make, and that purchase order is done before the expense is incurred. So for example, if you're buying something, if you're buying a box of pencils, you can't just go out and buy as a district. You have to do a purchase order ahead of time, and then that purchase gets in. Where the phrase then and now comes from, because it's a kind of official term, and what it is the board or the treasurer, depending on the amount, is certifying that when the expense was made, then we had the money to pay for it. And that now side of it is we still have money to pay for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I do have one more question. I had a couple more questions that I asked. One of them was around the attachment 1 for human resources, the vendor benefit focus at $62,000. Can you share a little bit of information about that? I'm a little kind of concerned because we are spending a lot of money for HR, and this is an additional request for 62,000? Can you
I'll
share a
let
little
the
bit of insight?
superintendent-
Yeah, so Board Member Moffitt, this is in the response that Treasurer Wagner sent to each of your questions at 3:03 p.m. She shared that during that time, when their questions came this morning, there had to be some research around the GE grant specifically. And because the grant has been around so long, it was actually in a binder. So they had to go and locate the binder to be able to be responsive.
Okay.
So the first, the question around benefit focus is actually, and I'm just going to read it directly from the response that she sent to you and the
Okay.
rest of the board. The contract RFP is in response to the findings and recommendations that resulted from the internal audit on the district's benefit processes. The progress of these recommendations are being reported out during both the finance and the audit committee. So essentially, this particular portion of it is a portion for the third-party vendor for benefits. If you recall, from both finance and from audit, that was one of the areas that was identified as a huge area of concern and has been for many years for the district. And so one of our points of action for that was to work through an RFP, find an appropriate vendor, and then move forward with that. So this is the portion to cover that RFP for the end of the year. And then a new the new amount would come back to the board for next year for the full year. So that's why it's in response to, I think the benefit audit for this one was from the 1920 or 2021 school year. So we've worked for some time to be responsive to that.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have one more question around, actually, that's okay. That's it. Thank you. I'll get those contracts from Treasurer Wagner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for particular items regarding the superintendent's?
Yes, I would just like to inquire about the then and now certificates as well. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in terms of board approval, the treasurer would have to seek board approval for anything that's above $3,000, correct?
That is correct.
So as I look at the then and now certificates, there are several items that are on here that are well over $3,000. And so I'm just wondering if it poses a risk to our budget or the funds that we do have if we're seeking board approval after the fact that these, these funds have already been distributed out. So I'm wondering about like, what is the process for like the purchase order, if those things are being followed, so that we can make sure that we are being good stewards of our money as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. Obviously, you see we have several then and nows in every one of these treasurer's reports. We do spend a lot of time educating folks on how to avoid that. We do a lot of work on the purchasing process to make sure things get done in a timely fashion. Generally, the things are budgeted. They're just not, we haven't done the purchase order. Generally, it's not exceeding the budget. It's just the purchase order didn't get done before the service or the goods were ordered.
Okay, thank you. And then my other, I guess, comment, definitely for me, but I think also for the general public, is just the way that the report reads. I'm wondering if there can be the recommendation for it to be a little bit more specific in terms of, what's actually in our budget for these particular funds, what we have spent to date, what we're hoping to maybe spend, and what the remaining balance would be, just so it gives more of a clear picture as we're looking through the report, where we're able to have a greater understanding of approving the treasurer's report. Again, I think it would just allow us to see more than just a snapshot, but to see an overall continuum of how our money is being, considered.
No, thank you for that. I will say Treasurer Wagner started the process in Finance Committee toward the end of last year to talk about a redesign of the treasurer's report. And so we're actively gathering feedback. So thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, let me, if I can second that, good point that Member Mapp brings out as Assistant Treasurer mentioned, indeed, that will be on the topic for the Finance Committee, because I think the last Finance Committee meeting we had, or next to last one, the treasurer said that she wanted to reinvent the treasurer's report. And very frankly, we've talked that if we go to more of a consent agenda, both the superintendent and the treasurer are both going to have to reconfigure their reports to facilitate that consent agenda if we're trying to do it right. And I think what you just mentioned, if the assistant treasurer will take that back, that's a great summary of what I think any board member would like to see. And I don't know that we've ever worded it as succinctly as Member Mapp just did. And I appreciate that. So thank you very much. Any other items regarding the treasurer's report? I have an issue, if I can raise it, and I don't know that this will come out correctly, but knowing where we are with our budget and knowing the commitment that we've made indeed to Great City Schools, and knowing as well that this board, new board, needs to talk a bit more about what we're doing regarding travel. I would like us, if we could, to at least for today, and maybe bring it back up on February 5th, if it's okay with the treasurer and it's not urgent, the $3,000 or the amount that we're talking in terms of the important virtual education that Member Mapp would be going through to kind of catch up with what we've spent 18 months, 2 years or whatever, working with Great City Schools, since that money also goes into the next fiscal year. Even though we have travel money, and we'll hand this sheet out that the board staff has put together, I think at this time it would be important for the board to at least go through and make some decisions so that we're not the only people that don't reevaluate our budget moving forward. So I'd really like to suggest, if possible, knowing we'll get back to this, but after we've had some discussion about it internally, I'd like to see if we can pull that one item for member maps in the service fund or what have you. I would also suggest that in preparation for that, the OSBA has a new board member 101 day-long meeting in Dayton for a registration fee, not of the $3,000, but indeed a registration fee of $350, and it would be the mileage. So it's February 3rd. If you can make that one, I think that would be great. That would be helpful. But then the board, we can all talk about how we want to proceed about the other expense. I think we'll do that, but I would really like us to at least have a discussion as a board about how we do it. So when we're asking everybody else to review and revamp, I would like us to be able to say we did the same thing, especially as it pertains to the kind of expenditure. I think it'd be useful for member MAP to do this. I just would prefer not to do this tonight on this one. And I think that would, let me finish, and I think that that would be a better way of communicating, because I think the registration for that is $3,000.
Point of order,
Mr. Linden.
President Bolden, and forgive me if I just forgot, who was the motion maker on the treasurer's report this evening? It was me. Okay, this was not a setup, I promise. I just genuinely forgot. But if you're proposing an amendment,
yes,
I would like to say that that's not an amendment that the motion maker agrees with. I'm happy to share why, but I think we would need a separate vote on the amendment.
Yeah.
Or people could just vote yes or no.
Vote yes or no.
But is it all right if I'd like just a minute to share why I'm supporting this not coming off the treasurer's report this evening?
Why would you bother?
If we're going to vote on it, I'd like to be able to share
okay.
Why.
So why people should vote for or against. Gotcha.
Yeah, and so there have been at least two, to my knowledge, board members who have done exactly the same training. One was me, one was Dr. Moffitt. And both of us did that before the board had agreed to enter into a coaching relationship with the council. So I don't think it's quite accurate to say that this would turn on whether or not we have or will have a coaching agreement with the council. but it's exactly the same program that I did and exactly the same program that Dr. Moffat did. The other thing I would just offer is if the expense is a concern, what was helpful for me was to split it across 2 different fiscal years for CPS. And so if that's something that would make this somehow more administratively straightforward, I think that's certainly an option. I just wanted to say that it was, I wanted to make clear that we have done this twice in the past with no concerns, which is why I'd like us to continue to do it the same way for our newest board member.
Thank you, appreciate it. So we have the rejection of it as an amendment, so we'll vote it up or down by item. I would just respond to that is that frankly, we too, as a board, have spent money without appropriate consultation with one another or with the superintendent or the treasurer or frankly, sometimes with the community. And so I would just suggest that at this time when we're going to be asking a lot of people to make a great deal of sacrifices along the way, what we did in the past may not be our best guide, but I appreciate not accepting the motion or the amendment, excuse me. Vice President.
Yes, I just have a follow-up question regarding the amount and regarding the particular training, if I may ask. When was it decided on that that would be the training that she would need to take, or was there agreement from the board? I just don't recall that or remember.
Oh, I think it was just at the election of each individual board member's interest. I mean, it's open to any board member who would want to join. And so I had made that decision as an individual. Dr. Moffat had made that decision, assuming.
My question is regarding that being put onto this report, regarding the amount and regarding who that's going through. Was there a choice in that matter?
I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Sorry.
So for board member Mapp, does she have a choice? Is that what she needs to take in regards to for this particular training? So I know that President Bolton suggested that there was an additional training coming up on February the 3rd. Was there an option of spending $3,000 versus $350? I'm just curious.
I think maybe a question for me.
And I'm not sure who made that decision, so I'm just trying to ask for clarity.
So, from my understanding, being a new board member, there would be an onboarding and there was the recommendation that this would be a great cohort to be a part of. So maybe there needs to be further discussion. However, this was just a recommendation. And so in applying, you know, I didn't think that it was not a part of the onboarding process. But yes, I think it's worthy for further discussion. I have no problem with being, you know, open to ensuring that we're being fiscally sound. But again, this has been a recommendation from several board members. So again, I would like to just have clarity as we're moving forward and identify what's going to be the most advantageous training or workshop available.
Vice President?
And just to add one more thing, I plan on bringing this up a little bit later on. I think it was regarding inquiries and updates, but regarding that new board member onboarding process, I just had a couple further questions about that, so we can circle back to that at a later time.
Okay, thank you. Did I see another hand to my left? Yes, Dr. Moffat.
So I am baffled at how this just makes us look completely disheveled. I don't understand if board member Mapp doesn't mind it coming off, why there is objection to the motion. So as a point of order, I'm a little confused as to why there would be objection when board member Mapp doesn't mind it coming off and there being further discussion. So I just want to call a point of order. Are we voting, are you refusing the amendment to the motion and we're voting on it as you motioned it to the, because I really don't think that this is a hill to die on. And I'm not exactly sure why you're objecting to it, nor do I really care. But I do think for the interest of progression, she doesn't mind that it be amended. So can we amend your original motion to just take it off and further discuss it? Or are we voting on it as you proposed it?
And
I think I may be confused because I may have missed this one.
Can I just say
Member Mapp.
this. So from being a new board member, and I don't know all of the details, but it was under my assumption that this was a collective, like, will of the board for the onboarding to, or this particular training to be facilitated. But I don't know what discussions or what decisions were made. I would love to be a part of the cohort. However, I will also entertain further discussion as well outside of that.
Mr. Lindy?
Yeah, and that's, I appreciate Dr. Moffitt's question, because I think the last thing I want to do is do something different from what the member would like. I think I was under the impression that it was something that she was interested in, and if it is, I wanted to be really clear that we've done this twice before in exactly the same way, with no questions, and we have spent many $1,000s more than this on professional development for other things other board members have done, and I can't figure out why this is coming for this particular training. But if the member is not interested, the last thing I want to do is get in the way.
It's not that I'm not interested, but I believe that it's creating some discord, and I would like to have greater understanding moving forward with what will be the decision that will be most effective, not only for my training and development, but for the collective.
If I could, as the chair, just take a point of personal privilege. This is exactly the last conversation or type of conversation that we wanted to actually have again. And as we're trying to turn the page, certainly Member Mapp is interested in doing this. She's a very professional person and she wants to learn as much as possible. We also wanted to go to the OSBA thing for less money or whatever. And it really isn't about this item. It's about us taking time to review what we're doing regarding our own travel, because I assure you, moving into the next fiscal year, everybody's going to be looking at their travel. And I think all we would ask is Mr. Lindy would accept it as an amendment to this motion tonight. We have the opportunity to meet as a board to figure it out, talk to the treasurer, and it has no bigger meaning than that, except I do want, if possible, that February 3rd in Dayton, if that fits in your schedule. And I again ask Mr. Lindy to accept it as an amendment so we can move on. And,
I'm so sorry, like if what I hear from Ms. Mapp saying is that you would love to pull it for tonight and then learn more about it and it could come back. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, but I would also like to consider that a part of the cohort, there is an actual conference, which would be February 9th and 10th. So I just wanted to think, I'm thinking in terms of like timeline.
Yeah.
In the event that I did move forward, would we be voting on approving
That's a
it
great
by
question.
that
Do we have another
3rd?
chance before then?
yeah, we meet February 5th.
Does that let you travel and everything? I mean,
We can discuss it further later, at a later time.
okay, well then I'm happy to withdraw. I'm happy to accept the amendment if that's something that the member is asking for.
That would be great. Thank you for withdrawing your objection. And now, are there other issues regarding the treasurer's report? Beyond that, we've discussed what people had. Thank you, Member Mapp. Thank you, Member Lindy. And we'll move on. I think we're ready to vote finally on the treasurer's report, unless indeed, Mr. Gustin, any other comment from you?
So can I ask who seconded the motion? Sorry, I missed that.
I think it was it Morales?
I think it was
Oh, Vice President did. I'm sorry,
Thank
I
you.
did not repeat that for you. I'll try to remember to do that
Thank you.
in contemporaneous time. All right, we're ready for our roll call. Hallelujah.
Now, Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Ms. Mapp,
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt,
Yes, except no on 2L. Catering.
Mr. Morosky,
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg,
Yes.
President Bolden.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let's see, I believe we are now ready to go to board matters. which I think we can move pretty quickly through at least all three of these, really. And let me get started since this first one is mine, and indeed it speaks to something that Mr. Lindy brought up earlier tonight regarding our presentation. We are in the process of building agendas on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, whatever. And indeed, I stand reminded about the consultation piece, but I wanted to do a couple things regarding building the meeting agendas. I think it was Member Craig that talked about a year-long calendar. And indeed, we had the old yellow sheet, so to speak, where we had a whole year-long calendar, and all board members knew what that year looked like. And I've already reached out to the superintendent and the treasurer about what kinds of things they would need to be seeing over the year as we fill in the slots. So we're aiming for a year-long calendar of our meetings for the whole board to know what that would entail. So that's one item. The other item regarding the agenda is the monthly agenda items, and that I would seek from board members any topics that you would believe need to be discussed and need to be added to the agenda. And that's my take on the agenda piece. We're going to have a year-long one eventually, and then also on a monthly basis, on a contemporaneous basis, please submit to board staff those sorts of topics that you would like to see on the agenda, as well as whatever topics we know the administration has to submit, especially for our business meetings, so that we can take action on their work. And that's part of the function. But the other function is for us representing the community, representing our interests, our passions, our thoughts, things that perhaps we need to get done. So I would really request that any board member that has some topic ideas, please submit to our board staff, Ms. Davis and Ms. Bruckner. And then the three of us will be working together about how we start to fill in the yellow sheet, as we used to call it. Second of all, very important, we have a Saturday session coming up. And not surprisingly, the superintendent and the treasurer and this retired teacher has homework for you. And that homework is kind of limited to two things in particular. The two major topics that we'll be dealing with on Saturday. One will be the ad hoc report. And indeed, the superintendent has requested that that be part of what we do, as has the treasurer, so that we come back with, I don't know, a better understanding, so we can give them as much direction and they can give us as much information as they have about the implementation possibilities. That'll probably be the beginning of the Saturday morning. And then the balance of Saturday will also be spent on the budget. And the homework for you is not only to review the 5 major recommendations from ad hoc, but the other is to review the roundtable presentations for the budget. Ms. Bruckner will be sharing that with us, and she's going to share the one that actually has what I guess these folks in administration are calling the sandbox, which if you do the link, you get the real specifics. And so that will be available electronically through Ms. Bruckner and Ms. Davis. And it's 50 slides if it's 2. And that doesn't even count the sandbox experience. So superintendent, is that a reasonable place to start or not, or to deal with our budget, because that's what the community has seen?
I would say yes. I will also share, however, with the board that for those that have already gone through the presentation and have looked at each one of the links, it is the same exact presentation that we started with. So there are some board members that did go through the presentation or they attended a session. It's the same information. So there is not anything updated in that information. And if I could also take a point while you're sharing this, I also would like to give kudos, I think, to all of our union leaders. We meet bi-monthly to talk about a variety of topics.
And when we got to the topic of budget, to get some feedback from the union leaders on some of the larger areas, I think that we all came to understanding just how much work we really still have to do. And they came back last week and we were able to do some additional follow-up work and get some additional recommendations. So we really are trying to do this in alignment. Not only do we have the feedback from our community, but this was also an opportunity to dig in even more to the presentation that they had previously seen, but really spend more time around that. So just for clarification, if you've gone through it, it is the same exact information. It has not changed since the very beginning.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Any comments about what our homework is? Those are the two things to focus on for that Saturday. We will also break at lunchtime, and we'll know the specific time a little bit later. I think the superintendent will be supplying us with that, because when we break for lunch, I know the superintendent has other things that she must attend real quickly and be back with us. But the treasurer has also requested a executive session. So half of that executive session will be with the treasurer. And I know the other part of that executive session probably will deal with the preparation for negotiations. So the treasurer will get back to us as to when we'll be breaking for lunch. And yes, I'm sorry, the superintendent will. And we'll get that to you when we know, but we can't tell you yet. Okay. I think Member Moffitt, I think you have the other board matters item.
Yes, I just had an inquiry. We spent a significant amount of time during ad hoc listening to the community share with us, the PRM community, the Silverton, the Woodford, the John P. Parker, lots in that area around the drop-down menu. We talked about it for the school selection process. We talked about it a little bit in the board meeting, business meeting, but we never really, well, I don't know, I thought we had kind of come to some sort of agreement, but it has not been adjusted for the, I guess, magnet selection process. So I wanted to bring that back up because that was a significant request to give those students that don't have, well, let me back up. Pleasant Ridge Montessori is considered a neighborhood school. If you do not have Montessori experience and you do not really want that, that is your only option. So the request, I know for the better part of a year has been, can they just have other options for the drop-down menu? We talked about that in the board meeting, but I don't know if we made a decision. So I just wanted to bring that back up because that still remains, to my knowledge, remains a significant concern. Now the process has opened up and we still have families in attendance at Pleasant Ridge Montessori that don't want Montessori and don't have the previous experience. And we have that as an only option. So I just wanted to bring that back up as a, what did we decide on that as a board? We kind of talked about it, and I don't know if we made a decision to the administration or what.
Superintendent?
So that was one of the recommendations that came in through ad hoc. With the other recommendations that came into us as well, which, as I understood from the ad hoc recommendations that we got at the very end, that we would have to review those things to determine what it would be that we would do next. So there wasn't a determination that was made for that yet. In terms of options, that's one of the items in the list. In terms of options, however, one of the things that administratively we have discussed from the very beginning around that recommendation, if that is one that moves forward, because there are several other implications to many of those schools as well. If that is one that moves forward, that would be one that we would anticipate would move forward without transportation. Because if we include transportation in the challenge as well, it only exacerbates our transportation needs. So one of the reasons that we did reach out to President Bolton about Saturday is we do need some feedback from the board. Now that we have gone through each of the items, some of them are directional in nature, some of them are talking about policy, some we have questions about in terms of what that looks like. That would be one of those things that we believe that we need to discuss in terms of the entire map and the entire picture, not just one isolated area.
Well, we talked about this as a board prior to the ad hoc report. We talked about this probably last end of summer. We did talk about it collectively. We just didn't make, I want to say administration was supposed to be doing some work on that. We can have the admins look back into the meetings as to when we talked about it, but no determination was made. And it didn't have anything to do with ad hoc, but it was brought up again at ad hoc. So now, and it was long before the magnet process opened that we wanted the information back, because it was a significant concern historically, and then it was supposed to be something that was researched. So can we get some sort of clarification outside of ad hoc, or is that part of what we're going to talk about? I mean, we hadn't even discussed the transportation ramifications. It was just about opening that up for the families,
right,
to choose.
When the initial concern was raised and the question was raised, my response to that was the same. And the response was, because you're correct, it did come up in, I want to say, email communication to us prior to ad hoc starting. There have been concerns about the Pleasant Ridge community and students that did not have experiences in Montessori, even though it was a neighborhood program, looking at some other options for them. In light of our work that we've done around transportation, anything that we are looking to do that is going to impact transportation, we have to consider as a part of a larger conversation. And so that is one of the areas there. So I think collectively, what we're looking to do with the schools, you know, we know that there's some conversation around John P. Parker and some of the other schools. There's been some recommendations about changing, you know, boundaries and all of those kinds of things. So it really, my request is that it is a part of the larger conversation that we have on Saturday. And then from there, we'll be able to follow up and move forward. We did not get this information prior to. We collectively understood that we were not backing up the magnet process as a result of it, because we have school that's starting in August. So all of the different nuances, being able to address it at that point, it was just not one of those options.
Okay, thank you. Phyllis and Pat, I think I want to work with you to see when we talked about that and find the meeting that we discussed it and how we left it. Because I know and thank you for clarifying, we did talk about it prior to school starting, and I thought we had some resolution or something that came out of that, but I just wanted to formally put it here and then ask. Thank you.
We'll make that part of what we discussed on Saturday.
For sure.
So that'd be great. All right, if that takes care of board matters, are there any inquiries and updates? We normally don't list. I've listed the ones that I have. Did anybody have any inquiries or updates? Vice President Weinberg?
Yes, I just wanted to inquire a little bit more about the new board member orientation plan. I know that we visited, I want to say October, November, but I just wanted to kind of have a quick discussion about the final draft. I just never saw a final draft, and if there was one, if I could be sent that final draft if possible.
Okay, thank you. And is that coming from board staff or administration or treasurer? Where would we think that would be coming from?
I think that would be coming from Board Member Craig and board staff, because I think that is the form that you came up with at some point.
No, I mean, it was something we discussed at the meeting. There were no changes that anyone offered outside of the one that you offered. And so at that meeting, we asked whether or not it needed to be something we voted on, and it wasn't. So no additional changes were made. We used that as the platform for which we did the orientation for Board Member Mott when she started. And so that's all that we've done with it from there.
Yes, Vice President.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure that the draft that we received, so that was the final. So even though it says draft on it, I can go back and then reread that and know that whatever's listed there, that's everything that everybody agreed on, because of course you said only one person gave a suggestion, and then that's what we're sticking to. Correct?
That is that document is the document that I put together that we agreed would be the process. In addition, there's the other documents that were provided from General Counsel, the Treasurer's Office,
yes,
and then also from the Superintendent's Office with regard to the additional things that the one pager from the General Counsel, the budget information from the Treasurer, as well as the information about all of our schools that the Superintendent provided.
Yes, thank you. So I have that in my email. I just thought that it was a draft versus a final copy, so I will accept that. Thank you.
Any other inquiries or updates? Let me slide through as many as I can right now. Again, board work, housekeeping, has passed out the board members' conferences and trips, the amount of money still remaining in various accounts per board member, and at least has been the practice member map that you would at least be assuming what is left from Member Jones, and that's a hefty amount, and we all have some others that sometimes we devote to another member if we care to. I also want to tell you and tell the superintendent particularly that President Sally Green of OSBA, she will be coming on the 4th of March, even though we have PD, that works in their schedule, and we look forward to having her, and maybe you and I can talk about some of the things she's particularly interested in that has been sort of her kind of calling card.
So just for clarity, because it is a PD day, I know you mentioned that she may want to visit schools. We won't have students that day.
That's okay. And I had to tell her that, and I said that she was interested in welcoming kids and what have you, and I said, well, I think staff will be happy to be welcomed too. So whatever. So we'll work on the things that she's interested in. I've got still plenty enough to do, and we will have we have a meeting that day, which is also her major reason for coming. Also, real quick update, if I could, because I need continuing assignments for the steering committee regarding vouchers and the law case that we're involved with. As you know, that's I've been given that opportunity to participate, and Cincinnati Public is participating in the steering committee. Those have been monthly meetings in Columbus, usually requiring in person because of the need for a quorum. To meet with legal counsel. And that's been changed now to be on every other month that I'll be going, and unless I hear any different from this board, I'm living on the previous assignment that I'm representing us, and that's the only way I can get my gas money back. So I'm interested in doing that. Unless anybody else would like to represent the district, I'll be more than welcome. We would just need to, okay, seeing none, just remember I want my mileage. And another quick issue is the planning for the OSBA Leadership Conference in November. It's already started. The next meeting is May 1st. Things are progressing fairly well there. Yes, and I've handed out to you the reference regarding conflict of interest again, I think, and open meetings, and also handing out to you, I could give you the link, but something to look at is the Ohio administrative rules, which kind of guides how boards are supposed to work and what they're supposed to be doing. Might be of interest to you. That's what I have for inquiries and updates. No other? Yes, sir. Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, President Bolden. I think one question I wanted to ask about the upcoming Saturday, or really any meeting, was whether we're going to be doing the exercise of setting priorities as a board in public with discussion and debate for the next several months at a time. And if I might, I know this is maybe new for Ms. Mapp or for others who are watching, but in the last 2 years at least, at this January work session, we've asked everybody, hey, what do you think are the most important things for our board to spend time on over the next 3 to 4 months? We've had a public discussion about that, and we've voted on a set of them. And then I've worked pretty hard to align our agendas so that we're spending our time in public on those issues that a majority of the board have said matter most. I know that there will be some alignment and some differences, I'm sure. I would love to see us focus most of our time on progress monitoring student outcomes for children. But is that something that you expect us to do?
And I appreciate the question. It's my hope that if no other way, but at least a rather extensive memo to begin with, and maybe some good dialogue that day, besides our budget, besides the executive session and our ad hoc, that as we move into this new period of time, that would be one of the topics we'd like to discuss. I will say my druthers is that from the standpoint, I think that was a very useful process, especially if when we did not necessarily have our vision, mission, guardrails, goals, or a strategic plan, or our forecast. And what I'm trying to work from is that which the community helped arrange for us. And that's a big enough job, but I'm happy if the interest of the board members is to go more specifically into that. I think that's something we can talk about as to what we'd like to do. Mr. Lindsay.
I mean, if what you're suggesting, President Bolton, is that we focus on what the community shared us about the goals and the guardrails and the strategic plan, I think that's great. And don't anything else for me. But I also think that having some of those discussions in public helped me learn some things about what mattered to other board members too. And sometimes people pushed me on ideas I hadn't thought of. And so I'm excited to see where we go next.
I think we can work that out, and I probably guarantee that we're all going to hear each other talk a lot in the next several months. Superintendent.
Just two updates from, is it time for
Please.
me? Okay, two updates for me. And so I appreciate President Bolton allowing us, I made the request not to do the goals and guardrails presentation tonight, and that was honored. And the reason that I did is because I want to make sure that we take the request around the kind of data that we're looking for, the kind of biographical information that we need, that we're able to put that in the presentation up front. It takes a lot of time to pull the data and get the data the way that we're looking to present it. And so doing that presentation now to make the same request that we had not been able to address from before, it just did not give the team the time. We don't have the manpower to go back. It takes about 3 weeks after we do it to go back and try to get that information again. So we will bring it back to the next, from moving forward, we'll make sure that we are adding as much biographical information as we have to the breakdown for the sheets, for the data that we're presenting, to try to be responsive to the ask. And to the ask from Board Member Morosky about the free and reduced lunch. The second is on Saturday, as an announcement for us, is our actual, why I do need to step out of our retreat for just a moment. We have our All Schools Expo at the Cintas Center. So think about Washington Park that we do on the weekend, that we did on the weekends before school starts. Think about that at the Cintas Center. So all of our schools are prepared. They will be participating, and it's a time for the community to come out and learn more about what we have at each of our individual schools. So we do want to invite everyone to attend. Really excited about it. So I want to step out for just a minute to go do the greeting so that I can then come back over to the retreat.
We appreciate that, and we will work the day's schedule around making sure that you're able to do that, to kind of be in two places at once. We'll try to make it as easy as possible. Appreciate it. Any other comments, questions, or any kind of other inquiries, updates? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to assignments. Who has any assignment for our administration? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to give you a couple. What a surprise. Very interested in something that came up today, and this goes to the treasurer's office. These line items, these categories, these grants that somehow are out there. I'm sure you all have done it, but it may be a reassuring thing for the board would be that the treasurer's office has reviewed all those kinds of line items or accounts. I would hate for us to make cuts when indeed there might be some minimal amount of money, and usually it has specific purposes. So I understand that, then they couldn't be applied, but I think it would be great as part of the budget process if Treasurer's office and certainly the superintendent could reassure us that those particular accounts, what they are and what they can be used for, can have impact or influence on the big decisions we have. I think that would be important.
For clarity, President Bolton, is that for the 019 account that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah,
That's
and
the
if there's
specific grants
others-
that come to the district?
Yeah, if there's other line items like that or accounts like that, I think it would be useful for us to see it. I'm sure they've been used properly and I don't have any worry about it, but think that as we try to find every dollar and use every dollar that we have, I think that would be helpful. The other thing, if I could make this assignment, and I hope that the board would be supportive of this assignment, I would like to see, if possible, and this is just the old county official in me speaking now, I would like to see all of the civil service positions and anniversary dates that we have. Largely because if we, God forbid, have to make cuts, indeed we want to be within keeping of the civil service requirements. And I think that that would be useful for us to have that kind of knowledge, because we do participate in civil service. So I would appreciate that one. And my other one is not an assignment, but just to applaud the administration. Again, we've for 18 months or more been looking at outsourcing and insourcing. And our recent action regarding those two positions, I believe there's others that if we brought people into the flock, so to speak, I hope that that's being looked at by the administration. Because now if it's true that we can save money by having employees instead of necessarily additional contractors or duplication of services, that would just be of interest to me. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Bolton. So that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit, and that we would, it was a part of the conversation that we had earlier, the assistant treasurer, myself, and the treasurer, as we're digging in deeper, preparing for information I'll talk to you about on Saturday. I think one of the things that we will need some direction from on the board on that, in that area, is there was a strategic movement to move certain positions outside of the district, administrative positions, so forth and so on. Those things have still been used, but many of those positions have been paid for outside of the district or paid for as contracts. So now that we have gone through and reviewed every one of our contracts, all of our contracts, it's really something for us to just really think about what is the position on the board when we begin to make the recommendation, because our recommendation will be made around what's the most cost effective for us, number one, but number two, and some of the specific, for example, special education positions, being able to have the ancillary staff that we can actually hire for those roles as well, so that we're still servicing our students. So we look forward to the conversation on Saturday.
Great, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any assignments? If we don't, the word announcement is here in acknowledgement, and you'll see acknowledgements instead of kudos. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, President Bolton.
I gotta look left more.
I do have a request. And this came because Board Member Mapp asked a clarifying question regarding the overload pay. There are approximately 4 to 5 pages of overload pay, and I know that you mentioned that they're listed, that we list the vacancies, but sometimes I don't think that that puts it in the context that's needed. Would it be possible to get the 4 or 5 pages of overload pay kind of broken down into schools and grade level? I'm very interested in what staff is having to work over at what particular schools with what particular grade. That's not always represented very clearly in the weekly report that we get. So if you just use that one particular nearly 5 pages of overload pay, and then that has a value to it. So I'm particularly interested in what schools are having to have overload pay with regard to the class size. And then, I'm also looking at it from a budgetary standpoint. Are we planning on cutting these particular schools? What is, I want to look at it in that context too. But to begin, I'm interested in the 5 sheets of overload pay, putting those names to a grade level and a school so that we can see what schools are having to consistently do overload pay, and then what is that cost?
Before we leave this, I am reminded by the Vice President that we still have a vacancy, an opening regarding our representation on the Cincinnati Recreation Commission. So if somebody is particularly interested in that, if you'll get back to me, I'd appreciate it. And then we'll hopefully have somebody before they have their February meeting, which I think is like the third Tuesdays or something like that. Is that correct, Mr. Morosky? 4 o'clock, third Tuesday. Great. Please get back to me. And then we have announcements and acknowledgements, and the acknowledgements are the new word for kudos, if anybody has one. Oh, Dr. Moffitt.
I have one. Rob was so generous and created a slide for me, and what you are witnessing on the screen is the Withrow rugby team that was acknowledged by Representative Cecil Thomas and Representative Rachel Baker. They were honored as state champions at the State House. So congratulations to our Withrow rugby team as they were honored. This was actually in our Hamilton County Democratic News letter, and it went out to a bunch of people, but I wanted to make sure that our district recognized that our Withrow rugby team won state.
Excellent. That's a great kudo or acknowledgement. Any others?
I do have an acknowledgement, although I don't have a slide, so maybe next time I'll make
Oh,
sure I
my
have
Lord.
that.
Got another one.
But I just wanted to acknowledge John P. Parker, as well as the partners that's listed: Imani Family Center, Rising Stars of America, Sweet Blackberry, Madisonville Education and Assistance Center, Kennedy Heights Arts Center in Artsville, for hosting such a wonderful event focusing on representation and literacy. And so they had the special guest of Karen Parsons, who was able to just share information about her recent story, as well as just really enlighten the community about what inspired her. And I think it was a great opportunity for families to connect and engage through literacy.
Thank you. Others? Yes, sir.
So I think I've been the one to champion this for the last year or two, but this past Saturday was the Ohio Ethics Bowl Regional, of which there were 14 schools, 141 students who came out in the blistering cold on 8 o'clock in the morning to compete. We had we had 7 schools of the 14 were CPS schools. While this year we did not win, we can't win everything all the time. We still did have great performances from each of the schools. And again, that's 7 schools who all showed up, which is the other part that I think was the really impressive part. We did have one team who could not make it because of the weather, but the other team from that school did a great job. And they actually took a picture of all the students on the stairs in the new Linder College of Business, and it filled up the entire stairway with students who were getting to interact with each other, getting to talk about real topics of debate within culture, within society, and having to think ethically about those topics. So it was kind of a great chance to see our students perform.
And thank you for the championing of that. Without you doing all that you've done to try to champion it district-wide, I don't know that it would be that successful. So thank you for what you do on that one. Any other acknowledgements? We good? All right, well, since we've finished the acknowledgements and the announcements, I'm going to entertain a motion that we adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn, and will I get a second faster than the first?
So moved.
Second. Boom. We are adjourned.